Dive into the vibrant heart of the Aztec Empire, where every bite tells a story of gods, sacrifice, and survival. From the humble maize porridge of a Chinampa farmer to the opulent feasts of Moctezuma's palace, explore the quirky, spicy, and sacred flavors that fueled a civilization until the fragility of their world unraveled. Can these ancient dishes teach us how to balance abundance with resilience in our modern age? Story 1. The strange food of the ancient Persians. Imagine yourself stepping back into the vast expanse of the Achaemenid Empire. Around 550 BCE, where the sun beats down on the arid plains of what you now know as Iran, you are a simple farmer in the shadow of Persepolis, tilling the soil with a wooden plow drawn by oxen, your hands calloused from years of coaxing life from the dry earth. The food you eat each day is not the stuff of grand tales, but the quiet sustenance that fueled an empire spanning from the Indus River to the Mediterranean. See, it's in these ordinary meals that the strangeness of ancient Persian cuisine begins to reveal itself, not through spectacle, but through the subtle, unexpected ways ingredients intertwined to nourish body and spirit. Your morning starts with a humble porridge made from barley, the staple grain that dominated the Persian diet. Barley wasn't just food. It was currency, rationed out in the Persepolis fortification tablets that recorded daily allocations for workers like you. You'd grind the grains into flour using a stone corn, mixing it with water or milk from your goats to form a thick gruel. Sometimes you'd add a handful of dried figs or dates for sweetness, fruits that grew abundantly in the orchards irrigated by the empire's ingenious Connaught systems, underground channels that brought mountain water to the parched lowlands. These fruits weren't mere treats. They were essential, providing the energy needed for long hours in the fields. But here's where the peculiarity creeps in. Persians often blended these sweet elements into savory contexts, a practice that might strike you as odd if you're used to keeping flavors strictly separated. You'd prepare a midday meal around flatbreads baked in a simple clay oven or tandoor fueled by dried dung or wood. Wheat flour, less common than barley for the lower classes, would be kneaded with water and salt, then slapped onto the hot walls to puff up into soft loaves. You'd tear pieces to scoop up lentils, stewed with onions and garlic, perhaps flavored with a pinch of cumin or saffron, that pungent herb imported from distant lands. Meat was a rarity for someone like you, reserved for festivals or when a goat was slaughtered, but when available, it might be goat or sheep, roasted over an open fire or boiled into a broth. The strangeness lies in the preparations. Persians pickled meats in vinegar, creating komis, thin slices of raw flesh cured and served cold, a method that preserved food in the heat but carried a tangy bite unfamiliar to many outsiders. Greek observers like Herodotus noted this with a mix of fascination and disdain, calling Persian meals overly focused on desserts and wines. Yet you know it was about balance, countering the heaviness of fats with acidic notes. Vegetables and herbs played a starring role in your plate. Grown in small plots near your mud brick home, you'd harvest mint, parsley, and cilantro herbs that Persians pioneered in cultivation and chop them into a fresh salad or mix them into yogurt from your sheep's milk. Fermented in earthen jars buried in the cool ground, Dairy was ubiquitous, butter churned by hand, cheese pressed into wheels, all adding richness to otherwise plain fare. Nuts like pistachios and almonds, native to the region, were crushed into pastes or eaten whole, their earthy flavors enhancing everything from breads to stews. And saffron, that golden thread harvested from crocus flowers in the highlands, was used sparingly by common folk like you, but it imparted a subtle luxury, a hint of the empire's wealth trickling down. Drinks quenched your thirst in the relentless heat. Beer brewed from barley, fermented in large vats, or wine from grapes pressed in communal troughs. Palm wine added a tropical twist, imported via trade routes that brought exotic influences into your kitchen. But the truly unusual came in chilled concoctions, precursors to modern delights vermicelli mixed with rosewater and ice stored in yaxles. Those dome-shaped evaporative coolers that kept snow from winter viable through summer. For you, such treats were occasional, perhaps during Nowruz celebrations, but they highlighted Persian ingenuity in taming the elements for pleasure. These meals, so rooted in the land's rhythms, reflected human resilience, adapting to scarcity with clever combinations, turning the mundane into something sustaining. Yet, as you sit by your fire at dusk, sipping herbal tea, you can't help but wonder about the kings. Tables, those opulent spreads in Persepolis, where exotic beasts and imported spices converged. What bizarre fusions awaited the elite, and how did their feasts echo or diverge from your simple repasts? Picture yourself now, not as a farmer, but as a scribe in the bustling heart of Persepolis. Around 500 BCE you sit cross-legged on a woven mat, clay tablet in hand, recording the flow of goods into the royal kitchens. The air hums with the chatter of merchants and the clatter of carts unloading sacks of barley, jars of honey, and baskets of pomegranates. Your role gives you a closer view of the empire's culinary world, where the strange food of the Persians takes on new dimensions, blending the practical with the extravagant. The meals you document aren't just sustenance. They're a language of power, diplomacy, and survival, woven into the fabric of an empire that thrives on its diversity. The royal court, unlike your former farmer's life, revels in abundance. You note the arrival of game gazelles and ostriches hunted in the royal parks, their meat roasted whole for feasts that dazzle envoys from distant lands. Herodotus, that ever-curious Greek, remarked on the Persians' love for lavish banquets, where tables groaned under the weight of dishes. You see this firsthand, platters of mutton stewed with lentils and apricots, the fruit's tartness cutting through the richness, a combination that feels both familiar and alien. The elite savor duck or goose, often preserved in brine or smoked over cedar wood, a technique that extends shelf life in the absence of your farmer's yakchal. These preserved meats, sometimes layered with fat to seal in flavor, are sliced thin and paired with bitter greens like watercress. Grown in the irrigated gardens of Susa, bread remains a cornerstone, but here it's finer wheat loaves, studded with sesame seeds, or sweetened with date syrup, served alongside bowls of yogurt infused with dill or mint. You record the use of spices like cumin, coriander, and turmeric, traded from India or the eastern provinces, their earthy warmth transforming simple ingredients into something memorable. Saffron, more abundant here than in your village, stains rice dishes a vibrant yellow, often mixed with barberries for a sharp, tangy contrast. Rice, though not yet a staple, as it would become later, appears in elite circles, boiled and tossed with nuts and dried fruits, a precursor to modern pilaf. You marvel at the ingenuity, the way cooks balance textures and flavors, creating harmony from the empire's vast resources. Drinks to take on a ceremonial role. You scribe entries for wine, not just from local grapes, but from regions as far as Lydia, served in silver rhytons shaped like griffins. Beer, brewed stronger for the court, is flavored with herbs or honey, while fruit, juices, pomegranate, mulberry are mixed with water from mountain springs, kept cool in porous clay jugs. The strangest concoction you encounter is a chilled desert drink, a mix of vermicelli, rosewater, and ice, sometimes thickened with starch to create a pudding-like texture. This proto-sherbet, stored in the palace's yakchals, is a luxury that speaks of the empire's mastery over nature, turning summer's heat into a fleeting moment of cool relief. Yet, the feasts aren't just about indulgence. You notice how food serves as diplomacy. At the king's table, dishes from conquered lands, Babylonian stews, Egyptian lentils, Greek olive signal unity, a culinary empire mirroring the political one. Even the lowliest workers receive rations of grain, oil, and wine, recorded meticulously in your tablets, ensuring loyalty through sustenance. But there's a shadow to this opulence, the strain on resources, the labor of thousands to feed the court. You wonder, as you tally another shipment of almonds, how long this delicate balance can hold. What happens when drought or rebellion disrupts the flow of goods and the king's table falters? You are no longer just a scribe, but a guest at a grand banquet in Persepolis. Around 480 BCE, seated among nobles under the flickering light of oil lamps, the hall echoes with the clink of goblets and the murmur of voices discussing conquests and trade. The strange food of the Persians, which you've seen from the fields and recorded in ledgers, now unfolds before you in its full splendor and oddity. This is the climax of the empire's culinary art, where every dish tells a story of resilience, ingenuity, and the delicate balance of power. As you taste the offerings, you realize that food here is not just nourishment, but a mirror of the empire's triumphs and vulnerabilities. The table is a tapestry of flavors, reflecting the Achaemenid Empire's vast reach. You sample a dish of roasted peacock, its feathers displayed for effect, the meat glazed with a reduction of pomegranate juice and crushed walnuts, a combination that feels both decadent and oddly harmonious. Another platter holds lamb slow-cooked with quinces, the fruit's subtle sweetness tempering the gaminess, a technique borrowed from Mesopotamian neighbors but refined here. These dishes, described in Xenophon's accounts, showcase the Persian's knack for blending the familiar with the foreign. You notice a bowl of stewed lentils, spiced with cardamom and served with a dollop of yogurt, not unlike what you ate as a farmer, but elevated with imported spices that cost more than a month's rations. The bread, soft and studded with poppy seeds, is dipped into a paste of ground pistachios and sesame, a rich spread that feels like a luxury born of necessity. Nuts preserved the harvests, bounty through lean times. Deserts are where the strangeness peaks. You're offered a chilled concoction, A falud-like dessert, a vermicelli in rosewater, sweetened with honey and sprinkled with saffron threads. Ice, hauled from distant mountains and stored in yakshils, makes this possible, a feat of engineering that awes you as much as the taste. Another sweet, a paste of dates and almonds rolled into balls and dusted with cinnamon, feels like a bridge between the commoner's diet and the elite's indulgence. Drinks flow freely, wine from Shiraz grapes, tart and robust, or a fermented mare's milk from the steppes. A nod to the nomadic tribes now under Persian rule. Each sip and bite reflects the empire's ability to weave its conquests into a cohesive whole. Yet you sense the fragility beneath the grandeur. The banquet's excess masks a deeper truth. Food was the empire's lifeline and its Achilles heel. The Persepolis tablets you once inscribed reveal the immense logistics, thousands of laborers, vast irrigation networks, and trade routes stretching across continents to sustain this opulence. Droughts or uprisings could choke these arteries, as they did during later reigns when rebellions disrupted grain supplies. The resilience of the Persian diet, born from blending simple grains with preserved fruits and meats, allowed survival in harsh times, but the court's extravagance invited risk. You reflect on how this culinary legacy, blending sweet and savory, mastering preservation, shaped not just Persian culture, but the cuisines of successors, from the Greeks to the Islamic empires. Today, traces of these flavors linger in modern Iranian dishes like fesenjan. How did such ordinary ingredients, transformed through ingenuity, become a lasting testament to human adaptability in the face of empire's rise and fall? Story to the bizarre banquets of ancient Rome's. Step into the heart of Rome around 100 BC, where you are a humble baker in the Subura, a crowded, noisy district filled with the smells of sweat, smoke, and fresh bread. Your days begin before dawn, kneading dough in a cramped shop, the air thick with flour dust. The food you prepare and eat reflects the gritty reality of the Roman plebs. But even in its simplicity, there's a strangeness that sets it apart from what you might expect. The cuisine of ancient Rome, especially for the lower classes like you, is a testament to survival, practical, resourceful, and occasionally bizarre, shaped by the city's relentless growth and the demands of its sprawling population. Your morning meal is a coarse porridge called pools, made from emmer wheat, a grain so central to Roman life that it's practically sacred. You boil it with water from the Tiber, perhaps adding a pinch of salt or a drizzle of olive oil if you're lucky enough to afford it. The poles is thick, filling, and bland, but it sustains you through hours of labor in the heat of your wood-fired oven. For variety, you might stir in a handful of dried chickpeas or fava beans, crops that thrive in the Italian countryside and double as offerings to the gods during festivals. The oddity lies in how Romans elevate this simplicity. Pulls could be flavored with herbs like lavish or rue, bitter plants that add a medicinal temps believed to ward off illness. You chew slowly, noting the faint bitterness, a reminder of how food and health blur in this world. By midday, you pause to eat flatbreads baked on your oven's hearth, made from the same emmer wheat or barley for poorer days. These are torn and dipped into a sauce called garum, the ubiquitous Roman condiment that defines their cuisine's strangeness. Garum is made from fermented fish, guts, anchovies, or mackerel left to rot in salt under the sun for months, producing a pungent, amber liquid that smells like decay but tastes oddly savory. You dilute it with water or wine to make it palatable, using it to season lentils or cabbage boiled in clay pots. Meat is rare for you. A scrap of pork fat or a chicken bone might flavor your stew on a good day. But slaughtering animals is costly, and most go to the temples or the elite. Instead, you rely on vegetables, leeks, onions, turnips grown in small plots outside the city, often wilted from the journey but cheap enough for your purse. Cheese, made from goat or sheep's milk, is a staple, pressed into hard rounds that you crumble into your meals for richness. You might trade a loaf for a small wheel at the market, where vendors hawk dormice fattened in clay jars, a delicacy you can't afford but whose oddity fascinates you. Drinks are simple. Pasca, a mix of water and sour wine or vinegar, quenches your thirst without the expense of the fine Falernian wines reserved for the rich. Occasionally, you sip Mulsum wine sweetened with honey during festivals like Saturnalia. When the city's hierarchy briefly blurs, this diet, born of necessity, reflects Rome's resilience, turning scraps and ferments into sustenance for millions. Yet, as you wipe flour from your hands and watch a wealthy senator's litter pass by, you wonder about the feasts of the Elethos lavish banquets whispered about in the Subura. What strange excesses await in their dining rooms, and how do they differ from your humble fare? Now, imagine yourself as a freedman, no longer a baker, but a caterer's assistant, working for a wealthy patrician in Rome's Palatine Hill. Around 50 CEU, scurry through the kitchens of a grand villa, preparing for a cena, the extravagant dinner that defines Roman elite life. The bizarre banquets you've heard about are now your reality, and they reveal a world where food is theater, status, and excess, yet still rooted in the same ingredients you once needed as a baker. The strangeness of Roman cuisine here is not just in the flavors, but in the spectacle, a delicate dance of power and waste that both fascinates and unsettles you. The scene unfolds in the triclinium, where guests recline on couches, their togas draped elegantly. You help serve the gestatio, the appetizer course, which sets the tone for the bazaar. There are platters of dormice, fattened in those clay jars you once saw at the market, now roasted and drizzled with honey and poppy seeds, their tiny bones crunching under teeth. Sea urchins, shipped from the coast, are split open and mixed with garum and chopped herbs, their briny richness a far cry from your old pulls. You carry out eggs, boiled and coated in a sauce of lovage and pepper, a spice so costly it's weighed like gold. Imported from India via the Red Sea, the guests barely notice the labor behind these dishes. But you know the army of slaves, cooks, fishermen, traders who make them possible. The main course, or prima mensa, is where excess peaks. Whole roasted boars, stuffed with sausages and figs, are paraded before the guests, their entrails artfully arranged to mimic life. Peacocks and flamingos, their vibrant feathers displayed, are served with sauces thickened by silphium, a now extinct herb prized for its resinous bite. You note the use of garum again, now blended with wine and dates to glaze lamb or kid, creating a sweet salty depth that feels both decadent and disorienting. Vegetables like asparagus or artichokes, grown in the fertile fields of Campania, are braised in olive oil and sprinkled with coriander, but they're mere sides to the meat-heavy spectacle. Bread, unlike your coarse subura loaves, is white and fluffy, made from sifted wheat and served with olive oil infused with rosemary. Drinks flow as freely as the conversation. Mulsum, the honeyed wine, is poured liberally, while fine Campanian wines replace your old Posca. You overhear guests praising the vintage, unaware of the vineyard's reliance on slave labor. Desserts, or secunda mensa, include honey-soaked pastries filled with nuts and dried fruits, and strange imports like dates stuffed with almonds and rolled in sesame. The oddest is a dish of so's udder, boiled and sweetened, a delicacy that makes you wince but delights the guests. Every course is a performance, with musicians and dancers adding to the chaos. Yet you see the cost, the resources drained, the slaves exhausted. These banquets, described by writers like Petronius in his Satyricon, are Rome's power on display, but they hint at fragility. The empire's wealth depends on far-flung provinces, and every spice or exotic bird requires a precarious network of trade and conquest. As you clear a platter of uneaten ostrich, you wonder what happens when these supply lines falter, or when the masses, fed on grain doles, grow restless. You are now a guest at one of these bizarre banquets, invited to a senator's villa in 80 CE, reclining awkwardly on a cushioned couch in a lavishly decorated triclinium. The air is heavy with the scent of incense and roasted meats, and the strangeness of Roman cuisine reaches its zenith. This is no longer about survival, as in your baker days, or logistics, as in your caterer role, but about Rome itself, its excesses, its ingenuity, and its looming vulnerabilities. Each dish tells a story of empire, ambition, and the delicate thread holding it all together, while the flavors challenge your palate in ways you never imagined. The meal begins with a flourish, a whole roasted pig split open to reveal thrushes baked inside, released like a culinary magic trick to gasps from the guests. The pork is glazed with a sauce of garum, honey, and defrutum, a syrupy reduction of grape must, creating a sticky, savory sweet crust that clings to your fingers. You try a slice of flamingo tongue, a delicacy so rare it's discussed in hushed tones. Its texture delicate, but its taste overshadowed by a peppery sauce. Apicus, the famed gourmand, would later record such recipes, blending the absurd with the practical. You're offered sow's womb, stuffed with herbs and pine nuts, its richness cut by a sharp vinegar dressing a dish that feels like a dare to your sensibilities. Even the vegetables are extravagant. Cabbage leaves wrapped around minced fish and baked in clay pots, a nod to coastal traditions, but elevated to absurdity. Deserts push the boundaries further. You taste libum, a cheesecake-like dish of soft cheese, flour, and honey, baked with bay leaves for an earthy undertone. Another tray holds pears poached in spiced wine, their flesh stained red and fragrant with cinnamon, a spice worth more than silver. The strangest is a molded jelly of fish and fruit, set with gelatin from boiled bones, wobbling on the plate and combining flavors that clash yet somehow linger. Wine flows in excessful Urnian, aged for decades, its notes of earth and fruit a stark contrast to your old Posca. You sip cautiously, aware of the vomiting rooms nearby. where guests might purge to keep eating, a practice that horrifies you but underscores the banquet's excess. This opulence, though, is a facade. The banquet's ingredients, spices from India, fish from the Black Sea, grain from Egypt, rely on an empire stretched thin. The unknowner roams grain dole, keeps the plebs fed, but riots loom when ships are delayed. Martial's epigrams mock the gluttony of the elite. Yet you see its cost, the slaves who toil unseen, the provinces drained to feed Rome's appetite, the resilience of Roman cuisine's use of garum to stretch flavors, its preservation of meats and fruit smears, the empire's ability to endure. But the extravagance, courts collapse. By the 5th century, invasions and economic strain would starve these banquets, leaving only recipes in texts like Apicius. You leave the villa, stomach full but mind uneasy, reflecting on how Rome's bizarre feasts shaped its identity. Modern cuisines, from Italian sauces to global fusion dishes, owe a debt to garum's umami and Rome's blending of cultures. Yet, the excess you witnessed feels like a warning. Empires, like banquets, can crumble when indulgence outpaces resources. What lessons does this leave for today when global supply chains echo Rome's fragile networks? Story 3. The unusual eats of ancient Egypt. Transport yourself to the banks of the Nile in ancient Egypt, around 1500 BCE, where you are a farmer in the fertile fields near Thebes. The air is heavy with the scent of mud and blooming lotus, and your life revolves around the river's rhythms, its annual floods that nourish the soil you till with a wooden hoe. The food you eat is simple, born of the land's bounty, yet carries a strangeness that reflects Egypt's unique blend of practicality and reverence for the divine. For you, a peasant laboring under the sun, meals are both sustenance and a connection to the gods, their oddity woven into the daily grind of survival in the two lands. Your day begins with a loaf of emmer wheat bread, the backbone of the Egyptian diet. You grind the grain on a stone quern, your hands aching as you mix the flour with Nile water and a pinch of salt, shaping it into dense, conical loaves baked in a clay oven. This bread, called ta, is gritty, often studded with sand from the milling process, wearing down your teeth over time. Archaeologists would later find such wear in mummies' jaws. You eat it with a paste of fava beans, mashed with garlic and a drizzle of sesame oil, a staple that fills your belly for hours of toil. The oddity comes in the flavorings. You might add crushed coriander or fennel, herbs grown in small plots, believed to please the gods as much as your palate. Vegetables are your mainstay, plucked from the muddy fields after the flood recedes. You chew on raw onions, their sharp bite a contrast to the sweetness of leeks or radishes, all eaten fresh or boiled into a thin stew. Meat is a luxury, reserved for festivals when you might share a roasted duck or goose from the Nile's marshes, offered first to Ammon at the temple. Fish, abundant in the river, is more common, but often dried or salted to last through lean seasons, its pungent smell filling your mud brick home. The strangeness lies in the preparation. Fish like tilapia might be stuffed with herbs and baked in lotus leaves, a method that feels both practical and ritualistic, as if the plant itself carries divine favor. Beer or henket is your daily drink, brewed from barley and flavored with dates or honey. Its thick, almost soupy and slightly sour, sipped through a reed straw to avoid the sediment. This liquid bread, as it's sometimes called, is so vital that it's part of your wages, paid alongside grain and oil. For special occasions, you might taste wine from grapes grown in the delta, but it's rare for someone of your status. Instead, you rely on water from the Nile, purified by settling in jars or flavored with crushed dates. This diet, born of necessity, reflects Egypt's resilience, turning the Nile's gifts into sustenance for millions. The interplay of food and ritual offerings to gods, bread shaped for ceremonies, binds your life to the cosmos. Yet, as you share a meal with your family under a palm thatch roof, you hear tales of the pharaoh's table, where exotic ingredients and elaborate dishes await. What strange foods grace the palaces, and how do they differ from the humble fare that sustains you? Now, picture yourself as a scribe in the royal court of Memphis. Around 1300 BCE, you're reed pen scratching on papyrus as you record the offerings for a festival honoring Osiris. You're no longer a farmer, but a witness to the elite's world, where the unusual eats of ancient Egypt take on a new layer of complexity. The food here, prepared in temple kitchens and palace halls, is a blend of opulence and tradition, reflecting the divine order of Mat and the pharaoh's role as a living god. Yet, the strangeness you noticed in the fields persists, amplified by the wealth and ritual that shape every dish. The elite dine on bread, but it's finer than your farmer's top, made from sifted emmer or barley. These loaves are soft, sometimes sweetened with honey or studded with dates, baked in molds shaped like lotus flowers or the Ankh symbol. You note the meticulous records, thousands of loaves offered daily to the gods, later distributed to priests or workers. The main course often features meat, a stark contrast to your old diet. Roasted beef from long-horned cattle raised in the delta is served with fanfare. Its fat marbled and glistening, flavored with garlic and cumin. Waterfowl ducks, geese, even cranes are plucked from the Nile, stuffed with herbs like dill and wrapped in dough before baking, creating a crispy, aromatic dish that feels like a culinary prayer. Vegetables and fruits elevate the meal further. You see platters of figs, pomegranates, and sycamore fruit, their sweetness a luxury compared to your old onions. Greens like lettuce, sacred to the fertility god Min, are dressed with olive oil and vinegar, a tangy mix that balances the richness of meat. Fish, too, is transformed. Mullet or catfish, grilled over acacia wood, are served with a sauce of fermented barley, not unlike garum, but milder, called jezum. The oddity lies in the presentation. Some dishes are sculpted into shapes of gods or animals, meant to invoke divine favor, blending the practical with the mystical in ways that dazzle you. Drinks are more refined here. Wine from vineyards in the Fiume is poured from painted amphorae, its flavor enriched with resin or herbs like myrrh. Beer remains common, but it's clearer, strained through linen and flavored with lotus or mandrake for a bitter edge. You record offerings of milk, sometimes curdled into a yogurt-like dish mixed with fruit, a rare treat that hints at the pastoral wealth of the nobility. Desserts include honey-soaked cakes made with ground almonds or carob, and a strange delicacy, balls of dough fried in oil and rolled in sesame, a precursor to modern sweets but rooted in temple offerings. These meals, documented in tomb reliefs and papyri, are acts of power and piety, feeding both the living and the gods. Yet you notice the cost. The grain, meat, and wine rely on the labor of farmers like your former self, toiling under the threat of famine if the Nile's flood fails. The resilience of Egypt's cuisine, its use of preserved fish, durable bread, and versatile beer ensures survival. But the elite's excess strains the system. As you seal another papyrus, you wonder, what happens when the Nile betrays its people, or when the gods seem to turn away? You are now a guest at a pharaoh's banquet in Thebes, around 1250 BCE, seated among priests and nobles in a hall adorned with lotus columns and gold-leafed walls. The unusual eats of ancient Egypt, which you've tasted as a farmer and recorded as a scribe, now unfold in their full grandeur. This is the pinnacle of Egyptian culinary art, where food is a bridge between the mortal and divine, a display of wealth, and a testament to the ingenuity that sustains a civilization. Yet, beneath the splendor, you sense the fragility of a society tethered to the Nile's whims. Its strange dishes, a reflection of both resilience and vulnerability. The banquet begins with an offering to Amun-Ra, a massive table laden with foods that will later be shared among the guests. You taste bread shaped like crocodiles, baked with spelt and honey, their crusts crisp and sweet. A far cry from your farmer's gritty taw. The centerpiece is a roasted ox, its meat tender and spiced with coriander and mustard seed, served with a sauce of crushed dates and wine. Birds, pigeons, quail, even ostriches are presented whole, their feathers reattached for drama, their flesh infused with thyme and wrapped in grape leaves. Fish, too, is elevated. Nile perch, glazed with honey and jessam, is arranged on platters painted with lotus motifs, its flavor rich yet balanced by the sauce's temps. The strangeness lies in the ritual. Each dish is blessed by priests, its consumption a sacred act to ensure cosmic order. Fruits and vegetables dazzle in their variety. You sample melons, figs, and dom palm fruit, their juices dripping as you bite, paired with bitter greens like chicory dressed in oil and cumin. A peculiar dish catches your eye: lotus root, sliced, thin and fried, served with a paste of chickpeas and garlic. Its crunch, unexpected yet delightful. Desserts are a revelation: cakes of ground tiger nuts, sweetened with honey and shaped into miniature pyramids, or dates stuffed with almonds and dusted with cinnamon, a spice traded from distant lands. Drinks flow freely: red wine from the delta, scented with myrrh, and beer brewed with pomegranate for a tart finish. The oddest is a milk-based drink, thickened with starch and flavored with carob, served chilled in alabaster cups. This opulence, depicted in tomb paintings like those at Deir el-Medina, masks a deeper truth. Egypt's wealth depends on the Nile's flood and the labor of millions. The Ebers Papyrus hints at the diet's practicality: herbs and grains doubled as medicine, sustaining health in a harsh climate. Yet the banquet's excess, like the grains stored in royal granaries, could vanish if the river failed, as it did in later dynasties, sparking famine and unrest. The resilience of Egyptian cuisines, preserved foods, versatile grains, and sacred rituals allowed it to endure, influencing Mediterranean diets and leaving traces in modern flatbreads and bean dishes. As you leave the hall, you reflect. on how these strange eats, born of necessity and elevated by faith, shaped a civilization. What does it mean for us today, when abundance can mask fragility and our own systems teeter on the edge of disruption? Story for the forgotten flavors of Mesopotamia's steppe into the sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia, around 2000 BCE, where you are. A barley farmer in the bustling city-state of yore, near the Euphrates River, the air hums with the sounds of irrigation, canals gurgling, and the distant clatter of market stalls. Your life is tethered to the cycles of flood and harvest, and the food you eat is a humble reflection of this ancient cradle of civilization. The cuisine of Mesopotamia, often overshadowed by later empires, carries a quiet strangeness in usual ingredients and techniques that sustained one of humanity's earliest urban societies, blending survival with subtle innovation. Your day begins with a bowl of barley porridge, the cornerstone of your diet. You grind the grain with a stone quern, mixing it with water from the canal to form a thick, nutty paste. Sometimes you add a splash of date syrup harvested from the palm groves that dot the landscape. Its sticky sweetness, a small luxury for a farmer like you. Barley isn't just food, it's currency, recorded on clay tablets as wages for laborers. The oddity lies in how you season it, a pinch of crushed leek or wild licorice. Herbs gathered from the riverbanks adds a bitter, earthy note that feels both medicinal and comforting, a practice hinted at in cuneiform recipes from the period. For your midday meal, you sit under a reed awning, tearing into flatbreads baked on a clay hearth. These are made from barley or emmer, kneaded with water and sometimes a bit of sesame oil, their crusts blistered from the heat. You pair them with a stew of lentils or chickpeas, simmered with onions and flavored with cumin or coriander, spices traded from distant lands. Meat is rare, perhaps, a sliver of goat or sheep during a festival, roasted over an open fire butt. Fish from the Euphrates, like carp, are more common. You eat them dried or smoked, their flesh pungent and chewy, sometimes mixed with dill or mint for a strange, aromatic twist that lingers on your tongue. The Mesopotamians' love for fermentation adds another layer. You dip your bread into a sauce of fermented barley, a precursor to later condiments, its tangy bite cutting through the heaviness of the meal. Vegetables, grown in irrigated plots, are simple but vital. You chew on turnips, radishes, or cucumbers, their crunch a contrast to the soft stews. Fruits like dates and figs, dried to last through the dry season, are staples, often mashed into a paste for energy during long days in the fields. Your drink is beer brewed from barley and flavored with dates or herbs, a cloudy, sour brew sipped through a straw to avoid the dregs. Wine made from grapes or pomegranates is for the wealthy, but you might taste it during temple offerings to Inanna. This diet, etched in cuneiform on tablets like those from Yale's Babylonian collection, reflects Mesopotamia's resilience, turning flood-prone lands into abundance through irrigation and preservation. Yet, as you share bread with your neighbors, you hear whispers of the grand feasts in the ziggurat's shadow, where kings and priests dine. What strange dishes await in their halls, and how do they reflect the power of this ancient land? Now, envision yourself as a scribe in the royal palace of Babylon. Around 1700 BCE, your stylus pressing into soft clay to record provisions for a temple festival honoring Marduk. You've left the farmer's fields behind, and the forgotten flavors of Mesopotamia now reveal themselves in the opulence of the elite. The food here, prepared in bustling kitchens, is a blend of tradition and extravagance, reflecting the city's wealth and its role as a crossroads of trade. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by exotic ingredients and rituals that tie every bite to the divine. The elite dine on bread, but it's no longer your coarse barley loaf. These are delicate rounds of sifted wheat or barley, sometimes mixed with sesame seeds or sweetened with honey, baked in ovens, fueled by tamarisk wood. You record vast quantities for temple offerings, later shared with priests and nobles. The main course features meats absent from your old diet, roasted lamb or kid, flavored with garlic, and a paste of crushed carob and cumin, served with a sauce of fermented fish, not unlike your farmer's barley dip, but richer, made with imported anchovies. Waterfowl, like ducks or herons from the marshes, are stuffed with leeks and herbs, roasted until crisp, their fat dripping into clay pots, to be reused, a practice of thrift even in luxury. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from irrigated gardens and distant trade routes. You see platters of pomegranates, quinces, and apricots, their tartness balancing the richness of meat. Greens, like purslane or watercress, dressed with vinegar and sesame oil, add a sharp note. The oddity comes in dishes like roasted lotus seeds, popped like modern popcorn, or a stew of turnips and dates, blending sweet and savory in ways that surprise you. Fish, a staple, is transformed. Carp or catfish are baked in clay envelopes with dill and coriander, the clay cracked open to reveal tender, aromatic flesh, a technique described in ancient texts like the Yale Culinary tablets. Drinks are central to the feast. Beer, clearer than your farmer's brew, is strained through reeds and flavored with myrrh or saffron, a costly spice from the east. Wine, made from grapes or dates, is poured from silver vessels, its flavor enriched with resin or mint. A strange drink catches your attention, a fermented mix of barley and milk, slightly effervescent, served to honor the gods. Desserts include cakes of ground almonds and dates shaped into crescents to mimic the moon, or a paste of figs and sesame rolled into balls and dusted with cinnamon, a nod to Sumerian traditions. These meals, detailed in cuneiform records, are acts of devotion and diplomacy, feeding priests, kings, and allies. Yet, you see the strain. The canals that irrigate fields are prone to salinization, and trade routes for spices and fish are fragile. The resilience of Mesopotamian cuisine, its fermented sauces, preserved fruits, and hearty grains sustains Babylon. But the elite's excess tests the system. As you tally another shipment of barley, you wonder what happens when floods fail or trade falters, leaving even the palaces hungry. You are now a guest at a royal banquet in Babylon, around 1600 BC, seated among priests and emissaries in a hall adorned with glazed brick reliefs of lions and gods. The forgotten flavors of Mesopotamia, tasted in the fields and recorded in the palace, now unfold in their full splendor. This is the zenith of Babylonian culinary art, where food is a symbol of divine favor, imperial power, and human ingenuity. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility of this abundance. Its strangeness, a testament to a civilization thriving on the edge of collapse. The banquet begins with a ritual offering to Marduk, tables laden with foods that will soon be shared. You taste bread shaped like stars, made from fine wheat and honey. Its crust crisp and fragrant with anise, a far cry from your farmer's gritty loaves. The centerpiece is a roasted gazelle, its meat tender and spiced with cumin and wild thyme, served with a sauce of fermented barley and pomegranates, tart and savory. Bird's doves or cranes are baked in clay with garlic and fenugreek, their flavors locked in by the sealed casing, a technique that feels like alchemy. Fish, like barbel from the Euphrates, are grilled with tamarind and dill, presented on platters inlaid with lapis lazuli. Their taste both familiar and otherworldly. Fruits and vegetables dazzle with variety. You sample quinces, figs, and mulberries, their sweetness paired with bitter greens like endive dressed in oil and vinegar. A peculiar dish stands out, a salad of cucumber and mint, mixed with yogurt and crushed sesame, its coolness a relief in the heat. Desserts are a revelation, cakes of barley and carob, soaked in date syrup and shaped like ziggurats, or a strange delicacy of fried dough balls, coated in honey and rolled in crushed pistachios, their crunch echoing Sumerian recipes. Drinks are lavish wine from Dilmun grapes, scented with myrrh, and beer brewed with saffron, poured from golden ewers. The oddest is a fermented mare's milk, a nod to nomadic allies, its tangy fizz a surprise. This opulence, reflected in texts like the Mari tablets, masks a deeper truth. Babylon's wealth relies on fragile irrigation and distant trade. Cuneiform records warn of floods or droughts ruining crops, and salinization threatens fields. The resilience of Mesopotamian cuisine, its use of fermentation, preserved fruits, and versatile grains allowed it to endure, influencing Persian and Greek diets and leaving traces in modern Middle Eastern flatbreads and stews. Yet, the banquet's excess, like the empire itself, teeters on collapse. By the 6th century BCE, invasions and environmental strain would dim Babylon's glory, leaving only clay tablets to tell of its flavors. As you leave the hall, you reflect on how these strange dishes, born of ingenuity and necessity, shaped a civilization. In today's world, where global food systems mirror Mesopotamia's fragile networks, what lessons do these forgotten flavors offer about balancing abundance with sustainability? Story 5. The Odd Offerings of Ancient Greece. Imagine yourself in a small village in Attica, around 500 BCE, where you are a goat herd tending your flock on the rocky hills near Athens. The air carries the scent of wild thyme and dust, and your life is shaped by the rhythms of grazing and the festivals that punctuate the year. The food you eat is simple, born of the rugged Greek landscape, yet it holds a peculiar charm, reflecting a culture that values frugality, ritual, and the divine. The odd offerings of ancient Greece, even for someone like you, are not just sustenance, but a bridge to the gods. Their strangeness rooted in the blend of necessity and reverence. Your morning begins with a chunk of barley bread, or maza, the staple of the Greek diet. You knead the dough from barley, grown in the thin soil, baking it on a flat stone over a fire of olive wood. The bread is dense, chewy, and slightly sour, often eaten with a smear of olive oil or a handful of crushed olives, their briny temps a gift from the groves nearby. For variety, you might mix in dried figs or wild herbs like oregano, a practice that feels both practical and oddly medicinal, as noted in ancient texts like those of Hippocrates. The bread's grit, from stone-ground flour, wears at your teeth, a small price for survival in this sparse land. At midday you rest under an olive tree, eating a simple meal of lentils stewed with leeks and a pinch of fennel, a herb believed to strengthen the body. Meat is rarer. Goats are too valuable for milk and cheese to slaughter often, but during festivals, you might share a roasted kid. Its flesh, smoky and seasoned with salt and wild mint, offered first to Apollo. Fish, caught from the Aegean, is more common. Sardines or anchovies, grilled over coals or pickled in brine, their sharp flavor a staple for coastal folk like you. The oddity lies in the condiments, a sauce of fermented fish, called gyros, not unlike Roman garum, is drizzled over bread or beans, its pungent aroma a shock to the uninitiated. Made from your goat's milk is a daily comfort, pressed into small wheels and sometimes flavored with thyme or dill. You trade surplus for honey at the market, a rare treat you drizzle over bread or mix into yogurt for a tangy sweet dish. Your drink is water from a spring or kichian, a barley-based brew mixed with herbs like pennyroyal, sipped during rituals or hot days. Wine diluted with water is for special occasions, its earthy notes a luxury you savor slowly. This diet, described in fragments by poets like Hesiod, reflects Greece's resilience, making do with rocky soil and scarce resources. The ritual of offering food to the gods, bread, cheese, or a goat's thetes, your meals to the divine, even in their simplicity. Yet, as you watch merchants pass through, bound for Athens' grand festivals, you wonder about the feasts of the city's elite. What strange offerings grace their tables, and how do they mirror or diverge from your humble fare? Now, picture yourself as a potter in Athens, around 450 BCE, your hands shaping clay in a workshop near the agora. You've left the hills behind, and the odd offerings of ancient Greece now reveal themselves in the urban bustle, where food is both a craft and a statement of status. You prepare meals for a symposium, a drinking party for the city's elite, and the cuisine here blends the familiar with the extravagant, reflecting Athens' growing wealth and cultural exchange. The strangeness you tasted as a goat herd persists, but it's amplified by new ingredients and the rituals that elevate every dish to a performance. The symposium begins with bread, but it's finer than your old maza, made from sifted wheat, a luxury imported from the Black Sea. These loaves are soft, sometimes studded with sesame or poppy seeds, served with olive oil infused with rosemary. You help arrange the opsin, the main dishes which contrast sharply with your rural meals. Roasted hare or boar, hunted in the hills, is seasoned with thyme and drizzled with honey, a sweet savory mix that feels both decadent and disorienting. Fish remains central, mullet or sea bream, grilled with fennel or wrapped in fig leaves, their delicate flesh enhanced by that fermented fish sauce you know well, but now mixed with wine or vinegar for a sharper bite. The oddity lies in the variety. Eels, prized for their richness, are baked with herbs and served to gasps from the guests. Vegetables, sourced from Attica's farms, are elevated here. You see platters of asparagus or artichokes, boiled and dressed with olive oil and coriander, their freshness a mark of wealth. Fruits like pomegranates or quinces, traded from Persia, add a tart sweetness, often paired with soft cheeses flavored with mint or sage. The strangest dish is a blood pudding made from pig's blood and barley, spiced with cumin and wrapped in intestines, a delicacy that nods to rustic roots but feels alien in this refined setting. Desserts, or tragmata, include honey cakes baked with nuts or dried figs, their sticky sweetness a prelude to the drinking that follows. Wine is the symposium's heart, diluted with water in ornate craters and flavored with resin or herbs like myrtle. You pour kykeon for ritual toasts, its barley base now mixed with grated cheese or honey. A sacred drink tied to the Eleusinian mysteries. The oddest offering is a barley gruel spiked with wine and mint, served to cleanse the palate between courses. These meals, described by writers like Aristophanes, are displays of Athens' power, but they rely on trade routes and the labor of farmers and slaves. You notice the strain. Grain shortages spark riots, and exotic ingredients demand wealth. As you clear plates, you wonder what happens when the ships from Egypt or Sicily fail to arrive, leaving even these lavish tables bare. You are now a guest at a grand symposium in Athens, around 430 BCE, reclining on a cushioned cline in a richly decorated andron, the air filled with the scent of olive oil and roasting meat. The odd offerings of ancient Greece, tasted in the hills and prepared in the city, now shine in their full glory. This is the pinnacle of Greek culinary art, where food is philosophy, politics, and pleasure, a reflection of Athens' golden age. Yet, as you sample each dish, you sense the fragility beneath the splendor. The strangeness of these offerings, a mirror of a society teetering between triumph and turmoil. The meal begins with a ritual libation to Dionysus, and the table is laden with dishes that dazzle. You taste wheat bread, soft and golden, served with a dip of olive oil and crushed oregano, its simplicity elevated by the quality of the grain. The main course is a spectacle, a whole roasted lamb, its meat tender and glazed with honey and vinegar, infused with wild thyme and rosemary, a balance of flavors that feels like poetry on the tongue. Fish steals the show. Red mullet, prized by poets like Archestratus, is baked in clay with dill and coriander, its flesh flaking apart with a delicate, briny sweetness. The strangest is a dish of octopus, stewed with wine and gyros, its tentacles tender and flavored with a tangy, fishy sauce that challenges yet captivates your palate. Vegetables and fruits are artfully arranged. You sample roasted beets, drizzled with vinegar and cumin, and fresh figs, split open to reveal their jewel-like seeds, paired with a soft goat cheese rolled in fennel seeds. A peculiar dish stands out, a salad of wild greens, dandelion, and chicory mixed with honey and gyros, its bittersweet clash a testament to Greek ingenuity. Desserts are simple but divine, honey-soaked pancakes, or taginites sprinkled with sesame, and cakes of barley and almonds, shaped like crescent moons for Artemis. Wine flows freely, a dark Chian vintage diluted in a silver crater, its flavor deepened with myrrh. The oddest drink is a Kykean variant, barley mixed with pennyroyal and honey, sipped during a toast to Demeter. Its earthy tang, a nod to sacred rites, captured in Plato's dialogues and banquet scenes, masks a deeper truth. Athens' wealth relies on its navy and colonies, vulnerable to war or rebellion. The Peloponnesian War looms, and grain from the Black Sea, fish from the Aegean, and spices from the East could vanish. The resilience of Greek cuisine, its use of gyros, preserved fruits, and hardy barley sustains the city, influencing Roman and Byzantine diets and echoing in modern Mediterranean dishes like tzatziki or baklava. As you leave the symposium, you reflect on how these odd offerings, born of scarcity and elevated by culture, defined Greece. In today's globalized world, where supply chains mirror Athens' fragile networks, what lessons do these strange flavors teach about balancing abundance with vulnerability? Story 6. The peculiar provisions of the Maya. Picture yourself in a Maya village near Tikal, around 600 CE, where you are a maize farmer working the milpas-cleared plots in the dense jungle. The air is thick with humidity, scented by earth and flowering cacao trees, and your life revolves around the cycles of planting and harvest under the watchful eyes of the gods. The food you eat is simple, rooted in the bounty of the Yucatan's challenging terrain. Yet it carries a peculiarity that reflects the Maya's deep connection to nature and ritual. The peculiar provisions of the Maya, for a farmer like you, are not just sustenance, but offerings to the divine. Their strangeness woven into the daily struggle to thrive in a lush but unforgiving world. Your day begins with a tortilla, the heart of the Maya diet, made from maize you've grown and ground on a stone mata. The kernels, soaked in lime water to soften them, a process called nixtamalization, yield a dough that you pat into flat rounds and cook on a clay comal over a fire of jungle wood. The tortilla is earthy, slightly nutty, and eaten with a paste of black beans, mashed with chili peppers that bite your tongue. The oddity lies in the reverence. Maize is sacred, tied to the Popol Vuh's tale of humans created from corn, and each tortilla feels like a small prayer. You might add a sprinkle of ground pumpkin seeds, their oily richness a nod to the forest's gifts. For your midday meal, you sit in the shade of a ceiba tree, eating a tamale maize dough stuffed with squash or greens, wrapped in banana leaves and steamed. Chili peppers, from mild to fiery, are ever present, their heat a constant in your diet, believed to purify the body. Meat is rare. You might hunt a small peccary or turkey for a festival, roasted with achiote for a vibrant, earthy flavor. But most days you rely on insects, grasshoppers, or ants, toasted and crunchy, a protein source that feels strange yet practical. Fish from nearby rivers, like cichlids, are grilled or dried, their smoky taste paired with a sauce of tomatoes and chilies, a precursor to modern salsas. Fruits like papaya, guava, or avocado, plucked from the jungle, add sweetness or creaminess to your meals. Your drink is a tole, a warm maize gruel flavored with cacao or honey, sipped slowly to fuel long hours in the fields. Cacao, bitter and frothy, when mixed with water and chili, is a rare treat, reserved for rituals or trade. Its beans as valuable as currency. These foods, detailed in Maya glyphs and archaeological remains, reflect resilience, turning jungle and limestone into abundance. Yet, as you offer a tamale to the rain god Chalk. You hear of the feasts in Tickle's palaces, where kings dine. What peculiar dishes await there, and how do they differ from your humble fare? Now, imagine yourself as a scribe in the royal court. Around 700 CE, carving glyphs into stone to record offerings for a festival honoring Kanich Janab Pakal. You've left the milpas behind, and the peculiar provisions of the Maya now reveal themselves in the opulence of the elite. The food here, prepared in bustling palace kitchens, blends tradition with extravagance, reflecting the Maya's cosmological worldview and trade networks. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by rare ingredients and rituals that make every dish a sacred act. The elite dine on maize, but it's transformed into delicate tortillas or tamales, stuffed with exotic fillings like venison or iguana, flavored with achiote and wrapped in palm leaves. You record vast quantities for temple offerings, later shared with nobles. The main course features meats absent from your old diet, roasted deer or tapir, hunted in the jungle, glazed with honey and chili. Their rich flavors balanced by bitter herbs like ipasa. Fish, like catfish from the Usumacinta River, are baked in clay with allspice, a spice traded from distant regions, their flesh tender and aromatic. The oddity lies in the presentation. Tamales are shaped like gods or stars, meant to honor the cosmos, blending sustenance with art. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from terraced gardens and trade routes. You see platters of mamey, sapodilla, and custard apples, their sweetness a luxury compared to your old avocados. Greens like chaya, boiled and dressed with lime juice and chili, add a sharp bite. A peculiar dish catches your eye, a stew of squash, blossoms, and maize, thickened with ground pumpkin seeds, its creamy texture a surprise. Cacao, now a staple for the elite, is served as a frothy drink, whipped with a molinillo and spiced with vanilla or chili, poured from painted vessels. The strangest is a fermented maize drink, balch, flavored with tree bark and honey, its slight buzz tied to sacred rites. Desserts include maize cakes filled with cacao or fruit, baked in embers, or a paste of ground amaranth and honey, shaped into figures of deities. These meals, depicted in Maya codices, are acts of devotion and power, feeding kings and gods alike. Yet, you notice the cost. The maize, meat, and cacao rely on the labor of farmers and the stability of trade routes through the jungle. The resilience of Maya cuisine's use of nixtamalized maize, preserved meats, and spicy sauces stains the cities, but drought or war threatens collapse. As you carve another glyph, you wonder what happens when the rains fail or the forests reclaim the fields, leaving even the palaces hungry. You are now a guest at a royal feast in Calakmul around 750 CE, seated among nobles in a hall adorned with stucco reliefs of maize gods and jaguars. The peculiar provisions of the Maya, tasted in the fields and recorded in the court, now unfold in their full splendor. This is the zenith of Maya culinary art, where food is a cosmic offering, a display of power, and a testament to ingenuity. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility of this abundance, its strangeness reflecting a civilization balanced on the edge of the ex-jungle's bounty and collapse. The feast begins with a ritual offering to Itzamna, tables laden with foods that will soon be shared. You taste tamales shaped like serpents, their maize dough soft and filled with turkey and chili, steamed in banana leaves with a smoky achiote glaze. The centerpiece is a roasted jaguar, a rare delicacy reserved for kings. Its meat tender and spiced with allspice and ricotta, a paste of chilies and cacao. Fish mohara or snooker grilled with ipasate and served with a salsa of tomatoes, habaneros, and lime, their heat a fiery homage to the sun god. The strangeness lies in the ritual. Each dish is blessed, its consumption a pact with the gods to ensure cosmic balance. Fruits and vegetables dazzle. You sample star apples and guanabana, their sweetness paired with bitter greens like amaranth leaves, dressed with pumpkin seed oil. A peculiar dish stands out, a salad of heart of palm and chili, mixed with ground cacao nibs, its earthy, spicy clash, a revelation. Desserts are divine, cakes of maize and cacao, drizzled with honey and shaped like pyramids, or a strange treat of roasted cacao beans coated in chili and sugar, their crunch a nod to ritual offerings. Drinks are lavish frothy cacao, spiced with vanilla and poured from ceramic vessels, or bauch, its fermented Thames heightened by cinnamon bark. The oddest is a maize atole with ground insects, a protein-rich drink that surprises yet sustains. This opulence, etched in murals and codices, masks a deeper truth. The Maya's wealth depends on fragile milpas and trade routes. Archaeological evidence, like pollen records, shows deforestation and drought-straining crops by the 8th century. The resilience of Maya cuisine, its nixtamalized maize, spicy salsas, and preserved game allowed it to endure, influencing Mesoamerican diets and modern dishes like tamales or mole. Yet, the feast's excess, like Calakmul's sprawling cities, courts collapse. By the 9th century, drought and warfare would empty these halls, leaving only ruins. As you leave, you reflect on how these peculiar provisions, born of faith and ingenuity, shaped the Maya, where climate and overreach echo their struggles. What lessons do these strange flavors offer about sustainability and survival? Story 7. The weird wonders of Chinese imperial kitchens. Step into a rural village in northern China, around 200 CE during the Han Dynasty, where you are a rice farmer tending paddies along the Yellow River. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and blooming millet, and your life is shaped by the seasons of planting and harvest. The food you eat is humble, born of the land's bounty, yet carries a peculiarity that reflects the ingenuity of a civilization already ancient. The weird wonders of Chinese cuisine, even for a farmer like you, are not just sustenance, but a blend of survival and tradition. Their strangeness rooted in the creative use of simple ingredients. Your day begins with a bowl of millet porridge, or joe, the staple of your diet. You cook the grains in a clay pot over a fire of straw and wood, stirring until thick and creamy. Sometimes you add a handful of dried jujubes, their subtle sweetness, a rare treat from the orchard, or a pinch of wild greens like amaranth, foraged from the riverbanks. The oddity lies in the flavorings. You might stir in fermented soybean paste, a salty, umami-rich condiment that transforms the bland millet, a practice noted in early texts like the Kimin Yaoshu. This paste, a precursor to modern soy sauce, is both food and medicine, believed to balance the body's energies. At midday, you rest in the shade of a willow, eating flatbreads made from wheat flour, rolled thin and baked on a griddle. You pair them with a stew of mung beans and leeks, seasoned with ginger or Sichuan peppercorns, their sharp, numbing bite a surprise to your tongue. Meat is scarceable, perhaps a sliver of pork or chicken during festivals, simmered with star anise butt. You rely on fish from the river, like carp, steamed or dried, its flesh mixed with scallions for a pungent kick. The strangeness comes in dishes like tofu, newly invented in the Han era, made from pressed soybeans and eaten soft with a drizzle of sesame oil. Its texture odd yet comforting. Vegetables like cabbage, radishes, or lotus root, grown in irrigated plots, are staples, often pickled in brine to last through winter. Fruits, such as persimmons or plums, are dried for sweetness. Your drink is tea, brewed from wild leaves, or a thin rice wine, wangju, fermented in earthen jars. Its mild warmth, a solace after long days. These foods, preserved in Han-era records, reflect resilience, turning sparse harvests into sustenance through fermentation and spice. Yet, as you share a meal with neighbors, you hear tales of the imperial kitchens in Chang'an, where emperors feast. What strange dishes await in those distant palaces, and how do they differ from your simple fare? Now, envision yourself as a court clerk in Chang'an around 700 CE during the Tang dynasty, your brush gliding over silk to record provisions for a banquet honoring the emperor. You've left the rice paddies behind, and the weird wonders of Chinese imperial kitchens now unfold in the bustling capital. The food here, prepared in vast palace complexes, blends tradition with opulence, reflecting the Tang's wealth and cosmopolitan trade. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by exotic ingredients and meticulous craft. Each dish a testament to imperial power. The elite dine on grains, but not your coarse millet. Rice, polished to a glossy white, is steamed to perfection or shaped into delicate dumplings filled with minced pork and bamboo shoots, seasoned with fermented black beans. You record vast stores of wheat noodles, boiled and tossed with sesame paste or chili oil, a dish that feels both familiar and refined. The main course features meats absent from your old diet, roasted duck or goose, glazed with honey and star anise, their crispy skin a marvel. Lamb, imported from the steppes, is stewed with cinnamon and fennel, a nod to Silk Road influences. Fish, like mandarin fish from southern rivers, are steamed with ginger and fermented soybeans, their delicate flesh enhanced by a sauce that's sharp yet savory. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from imperial gardens and distant tributaries. You see platters of lotus seeds, candied with sugar, or persimmons, dried and paired with soft tofu skin. Greens like water spinach are stir-fried with garlic, their crunch a contrast to rich meats. The oddity lies in dishes like bird's nest soup, made from swiftlet saliva, its gelatinous texture prized for vitality, or a strange jelly of mung bean starch, cut into noodles and dressed with vinegar and chili. Drinks are lavish. Rice, wine, clear and fragrant, is poured from jade vessels, while tea, now a court staple, is whisked with salt or mint. The strangest is a fermented mare's milk, kumis, from nomadic allies. Its tangy fizz, a diplomatic gesture. Desserts include mooncakes, stuffed with red bean paste or lotus seed, their flaky layers, a craft of palace bakers. These meals, noted in Tang poetry and records, are displays of power, blending Han traditions with flavors from Persia and Central Asia. Yet, you see the cost. The rice, spices, and exotic ingredients rely on vast trade networks and peasant labor. The resilience of Chinese cuisine, its fermented pastes, preserved fruits, and versatile grains sustains the empire, but excess strains the system. As you tally another shipment of Sichuan pepper, you wonder what happens when drought or rebellion disrupts these roots, leaving the imperial tables bare. You are now a guest at an imperial banquet in Chang'an, around 750 CE, seated among nobles in a hall adorned with silk tapestries and lacquered screens. The weird wonders of Chinese imperial kitchens, tasted in the fields and recorded in the court, now shine in their full glory. This is the pinnacle of Temp's culinary art, where food is power, culture, and cosmology. Each dish a reflection of an empire at its zenith. Yet, as you savor the offerings, you sense the fragility beneath the splendor. Their strangeness a mirror of a civilization stretched by ambition. The banquet begins with a toast to the emperor. Tables groan with dishes that dazzle. You taste rice dumplings, or zongzi, wrapped in bamboo leaves, filled with pork and chestnuts, their sticky texture infused with soy paste and star anise. The centerpiece is a whole roasted pig, its skin crackling and glazed with maltose and vinegar, served with a dipping sauce of fermented soybeans and chili. A fiery sweet balance that captivates. Fish carp from the Wei River are steamed with scallions and Sichuan peppercorns, their flesh melting under a spicy, numbing sauce. The strangest is a dish of jellyfish, soaked and sliced thin, tossed with sesame oil and coriander. Its chewy texture, a surprise noted in Temp's culinary texts. Vegetables and fruits are a spectacle. You sample bamboo shoots, stir-fried with garlic and black pepper from India, or lychees, shipped from the south, their juicy sweetness a luxury. A peculiar dish stands out, lotus root, sliced and stuffed with glutinous rice, steamed until tender and drizzled with osmanthus syrup. Its floral notes, otherworldly. Desserts are divine, pastries of wheat flour and red bean paste, shaped like peonies, or a strange treat of candied ginger and pine nuts, their spicy crunch a nod to medicinal traditions. Drinks flow free-aged rice wine, fragrant with cassia, or tea whisked with chrysanthemum, poured from porcelain. The oddest is a soup of fermented rice and goji berries, its sweet tart warmth a ritual offering. This opulence, captured in Tang poetry like dufus, masks a deeper truth. The empire's wealth relies on fragile trade routes and peasant toil. Archaeological records show drought and rebellion, like the An Lushan rebellion, disrupting supplies by the 8th century. The resilience of Chinese cuisine, its fermented sauces, spicy seasonings, and versatile rice-shaped Silk Road cuisines, and modern dishes like dim sum or soy-based sauces. Yet, the banquet's excess, like the Tang's overreach, courts collapse. As you leave, you reflect on how these weird wonders, born of ingenuity and ambition, defined an era. In today's world, where global food systems echo the Tang's networks. What lessons do these strange flavors teach about balancing splendor with sustainability? Story 8. The eccentric edibles of the Inca Empire. Imagine yourself in a highland village near Cusco, around 1450 CE, where you are a quinoa farmer tending terraced fields in the Andes. The air is crisp, scented with mountain herbs and damp earth, and your life revolves around the cycles of planting and harvest under the gaze of the sun god. Inti, the food you eat, is simple, drawn from the rugged terrain, yet carries a peculiarity that reflects the Incas' mastery of their environment. The eccentric edibles of the Inca Empire, for a farmer like you, are not just sustenance, but offerings to the divine. Their strangeness, rooted in the ingenious use of altitude and tradition. Your day begins with a bowl of quinoa porridge, the staple of your diet, grown in the thin soil of your terraces. You rinse the bitter saponin coating from the grains and boil them in a clay pot over a fire of dried llama dung, creating a nutty, warming meal. Sometimes you add dried potatoes or toned freeze-dried in the Andean nights, their starchy texture a lifeline in lean times. The oddity lies in the seasoning, a pinch of crushed aji chili peppers, fiery and bright, or wild herbs like huacate, with its minty stems, believed to honor the spirits of the mountains. As noted in chronicles like Garcilaso de la Vegas. At midday, you rest on a stone bench, eating tamales maize dough wrapped in corn husks, stuffed with mashed beans or squash and steamed over embers. Meat is rare. You might roast a guinea pig or kai for a festival, its crispy skin flavored with aji and salt, offered first to Inti. More often, you rely on dried llama or alpaca meat, charqui, chewy and smoky, paired with a sauce of tomatoes and chilies, a precursor to modern Andean salsas. The strangeness comes in dishes like toasted, canca-popped maize kernels, crunchy and salted, a snack that feels both familiar and novel. Vegetables, like oca tubers or uluco, are boiled or dried, their earthy flavors a staple. Fruits, such as lucuma or passion fruit, plucked from lower valleys, add sweetness, often mashed into a paste. Your drink is chicha, a fermented maize beer, tangy and slightly fizzy, sipped through a reed to avoid sediment. These foods, etched in Inca oral traditions, reflect resilience, turning harsh altitudes into abundance through terracing and preservation. Yet, as you offer quinoa to the Apu mountain spirits, you hear of feasts in Cusco's palaces, where the Sapa Inca dines. What eccentric dishes await there, and how do they differ from your humble fare? Now, picture yourself as a storehouse keeper in the imperial city of Cusco, around 1475 CE, managing vast calca warehouses filled with grain and dried goods for the Inca elite. You've left the terraces behind, and the eccentric edibles of the Inca Empire now reveal themselves in the opulence of the capital. The food here, prepared in bustling palace kitchens, blends tradition with grandeur, reflecting the Incas' divine authority and vast empire. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by rare ingredients and rituals that tie each dish to the cosmos. The elite dine on maize and quinoa, but in refined forms. You oversee the distribution of fine maize flour for humitas, delicate tamales stuffed with minced alpaca or avocado, steamed in corn husks, and flavored with aji and wakati. The main course features meats absent from your old diet, roasted venison or vicuna, hunted in the highlands, glazed with honey and chili, their tender flesh a symbol of wealth. Guinea pig, now a delicacy, is baked in clay ovens with oca tubers, its crispy skin infused with cumin-like Camino silvestre. Fish, like trout from Lake Titicaca, are smoked or grilled with Muna herbs, their flavor enhanced by a sauce of ground peanuts and chilies. A sophisticated twist on your farmer's salsas, vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from the empire's diverse climates. You see platters of mashua tubers, sweet and peppery, or cherimoya, their creamy flesh a luxury. Greens like quinoa leaves are boiled and dressed with aji and llama fat, their bitterness balancing rich meats. The oddity lies in dishes like chuno stew, where freeze-dried potatoes are simmered with dried fish and lucuma paste, blending sweet and savory in unexpected ways. Drinks are central. Chicha morada, made from purple maize, is sweet and tart, while chicha de jora, fermented longer, is poured from ceramic carrows for toasts to Pachamama. The strangest is a brew of fermented quinoa and mulberries, its spicy tang a ritual offering. Desserts include maize cakes filled with lucuma or coca leaves, chewed for energy and baked into sweets for the elite. These meals, recorded in quipu knots and Spanish chronicles, are acts of divine reciprocity, feeding nobles and gods. Yet, you notice the cost. The maize, meats, and fruits rely on terraced fields and the labor of thousands, vulnerable to drought or rebellion. The resilience of Inca cuisinists, preserved chuno spicy salsas, and versatile quinoa sustains the empire. But excess strains the system. As you tally another sack of maize, you wonder what happens when rains fail or the empire's roads falter, leaving even Cusco's tables empty. You are now a guest at a royal feast in Cusco around 1500 CE, seated among nobles in a stone hall adorned with gold plaques and woven textiles. The eccentric edibles of the Inca Empire, tasted in the fields and managed in the storehouses, now unfold in their full splendor. This is the zenith of Inca culinary art, where food is a divine pact, a display of imperial might, and a testament to ingenuity. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility of this abundance, its strangeness reflecting a civilization balanced on the Andes' precarious bounty. The feast begins with a ritual offering to Inti, tables laden with foods that will soon be shared. You taste sankyu, a maize bread baked with aji and honey, its crust crisp and fragrant, a far cry from your farmer's quinoa porridge. The centerpiece is a roasted llama, its meat tender and spiced with wakate and aji pemeka, served with a sauce of ground peanuts and chilies, a rich, fiery blend that dazzles. Guinea pigs, now plentiful, are stuffed with quinoa and herbs, roasted whole, their skin crackling. Fish from coastal regions, like anchovies, are dried and ground into a paste with rakoto peppers, spread on maize cakes, their intense flavor a nod to the empire's reach. Fruits and vegetables shine. You sample pake, its sweet, cottony pods paired with bitter uluco tubers, dressed with muna oil. A peculiar dish stands out, a stew of mashua and dried alpaca, thickened with chuno and flavored with lucuma. its sweet-earthy mix a revelation. Desserts are divine, cakes of quinoa and cherimoya, drizzled with algarabana syrup, or a strange treat of toasted concha, coated in honey and coca, their crunch sacred to the gods. Drinks flocha, morada, vibrant and tart, or chicha de jora, poured from gold carrows. The oddest is a fermented oca brew, tangy and spiked with malt, sipped during toasts to Viracocha. This opulence, noted in chronicles like Bernab Kobo S, masks a deeper truth. The Incas' wealth depends on fragile terraces and mita labor. Archaeological records show drought and over-farming straining crops by the 16th century. The resilience of Inca cuisine, its chuno, spicy salsas, and hearty quinoa-shaped Andean diets, and modern dishes like ceviche or pachamanca. Yet, the feast's excess, like the empire, court's collapse. By the 1530s, Spanish conquest would unravel Cusco's glory, leaving only ruins and recipes. As you leave, you reflect on how these eccentric edibles, born of faith and ingenuity, defined the Inca in today's world, where climate and globalization echo their challenges. What lessons do these strange flavors offer about sustainability and resilience? Story 9: The Curious Cuisine of the Indus Valley. Where you are a barley farmer tending fields along the fertile banks of the Ravi River. The air is warm, scented with damp earth, and your life is shaped by the monsoon's rhythm and the hum of a bustling urban center. The food you eat is simple, drawn from the Indus Valley's rich soils, yet carries a curious edge that reflects one of the world's earliest civilizations. The curious cuisine of the Indus Valley, for a farmer like you, is not just sustenance, but a blend of innovation and ritual. Its strangeness rooted in the practical use of the land's bounty. Your day begins with a flat or roti made from barley or wheat grown in your fields. You grind the grain on a stone quern, mixing the flour with water from the river to form a dough. Then cook it on a clay tawa over a fire of dried reeds. The bread is nutty, slightly chewy, and eaten with a paste of lentils, mashed with wild turmeric for a bitter, earthy kick. The oddity lies in the seasoning. You might add crushed agewane seeds, their thyme-like bite, believed to aid digestion, a practice hinted at in archaeological finds of spice residues. This simple meal fuels long hours under the sun. At midday, you rest under a banyan tree, eating a stew of mung beans and wild greens like purslane, flavored with cumin or coriander seeds traded from nearby villages. Meat is rare, perhaps a goat or chicken during festivals, roasted with salt and smeared with a paste of tamarind and chili butt fish from the Ravi. Like rohu, are more common, grilled or dried, their smoky flesh paired with a chutney of sour plums. The strangeness comes in fermented foods. A sour barley paste, akin to a primitive pickle, adds a tangy depth to your meal. A technique likely used to preserve harvests. Vegetables like gourds or eggplants, grown in irrigated plots, are staples, often boiled or charred. Fruits such as dates or jujubes, foraged or cultivated, provide sweetness. Your drink is water, sometimes infused with crushed mint, or a fermented barley brew, cloudy and tart, sipped from clay cups. These foods, inferred from Indus Valley artifacts like grinding stones and pottery, reflect resilience, turning seasonal floods into abundance. Yet, as you trade grain at Harappa's market, you hear of feasts in the city's elite quarters. What curious dishes await there, and how do they differ from your humble fare? Now, envision yourself as a scribe in Mohenjo-Daro around 2400 BCE, etching seals with pictographs to track grain for a festival honoring a deity, perhaps the Protoshiva of Indus seals. You've left the fields behind, and the curious cuisine of the Indus Valley now reveals itself in the urban sophistication of this planned city. The food here, prepared in communal kitchens or elite homes, blends tradition with the wealth of trade, reflecting the civilization's order and connectivity. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by diverse ingredients and rituals that tie meals to the divine. The elite dine on grains, but not just your rustic roti. Wheat and barley are sifted into fine flour for soft flatbreads, baked in tander-like ovens, and served with sesame oil or ghee, a clarified butter traded from pastoralists. You record stores of rice, a new crop from the east, steamed and mixed with lentils and ajwain for aromatic depth. The main course features meats absent from your old diet, roasted antelope or water buffalo, seasoned with cumin and a paste of tamarind and mustard seeds, their rich flavors a mark of status. Fish, like carp from the Indus, are baked in clay with fennel seeds, their flesh tender and paired with a sauce of fermented barley and sour mango, a complex blend that surprises you. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from irrigated gardens and trade routes. You see platters of melons, pomegranates, and bananas, their sweetness a luxury compared to your old jujubes. Greens like amaranth are boiled and dressed with vinegar and ajwain, balancing meat's heaviness. The oddity lies in dishes like a stew of lotus stem and chickpeas, thickened with ground sesame, or a strange flatbread stuffed with mashed dates and spices, baked until crisp. Drinks are refined. Barley beer, filtered through straws, is flavored with honey or saffron, a spice from distant lands. The strangest is a fermented rice drink, sura, tart and slightly effervescent, poured during rituals. Desserts include cakes of wheat and honey, studded with dried fruits, or a paste of roasted barley and jujubes, shaped into small rounds. These meals, suggested by Indus pottery and seal imagery, are acts of community and devotion, feeding elites and deities. Yet, you notice the cost. The grain, spices, and fish rely on monsoon-fed fields and trade networks across the subcontinent. The resilience of Indus cuisine, its fermented sauces, preserved fruits, and versatile grains sustain cities, but floods or trade disruptions threaten stability. As you etch another seal, you wonder, what happens when the rains fail or rivers shift, leaving even these tables bare? You are now a guest at a grand feast in Harappa, around 2300 BCE, seated among merchants and priests in a courtyard adorned with terracotta figurines and intricate seals. The curious cuisine of the Indus Valley, tasted in the fields and recorded in the city, now unfolds in its full splendor. This is the pinnacle of Indus culinary art, where food is ritual, trade, and innovation, reflecting a civilization at its height. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility beneath the abundance, its strangeness, a mirror of a society reliant on rivers and distant connections. The feast begins with an offering to the divine, perhaps the horned deity of seals, tables laden with foods that dazzle. You taste soft wheat flatbreads, baked with ghee and sprinkled with nigella seeds, their richness a far cry from your farmer's roti. The centerpiece is a roasted boar, its meat tender and spiced with cumin and ajwain, served with a sauce of fermented barley and tamarind, tart and savory. Fish catfish from the Raviar grilled with coriander and wrapped in banana leaves, their smoky flavor enhanced by a chutney of green mango and chili. The strangest is a dish of snails, boiled and seasoned with mustard seeds and vinegar. Their chewy texture, a delicacy noted in trade records with Mesopotamia, fruits and vegetables shine. You sample custard apples and figs, paired with bitter greens like fenugreek, dressed with sesame oil. A peculiar dish stands out, a salad of water, chestnut, and lotus seeds, mixed with ground peanuts and chili. Its crunchy, spicy blend, a revelation. Desserts are divine. Cakes of rice, flour, and honey, shaped like seals, or a strange treat of roasted barley balls coated in date syrup and sesame, their crunch a nod to ritual offerings. Drinks flow-filtered barley beer, scented with saffron or surah, poured from clay vessels. The oddest is a fermented millet drink, spiked with wild mint, sipped during toasts to the river gods. This opulence, inferred from Indus artifacts and Mesopotamian trade texts, masks a deeper truth. Harappa's wealth depends on monsoon-fed agriculture and trade routes to Persia and Central Asia. Archaeological evidence shows river shifts and drought stressing crops by 1900 BCE. The resilience of Indus cuisine, fermented pastes, spicy and hearty grain-shaped South Asian diets, echoing in modern roti and curries. Yet, the feast's excess, like the civilization, courts collapse. By 1800 BCE, climate shifts would dim Harappa's glory, leaving only ruins. As you leave, you reflect on how these curious dishes, born of ingenuity and trade, defined the Indus Valley. In today's world, where climate and globalization echo their challenges, what lessons do these strange flavors offer about sustainability and resilience? Story 10. The singular savors of ancient Rome. Step into a small farming village near Rome, around 100 BCE. Where you are, a tenant farmer tending vineyards and olive groves along the Tiber River. The air is warm, scented with ripe grapes and dusty earth, and your life is shaped by the rhythms of planting and harvest under the favor of Ceres. The food you eat is simple, drawn from the fertile Italian countryside, yet carries a singular charm that reflects Rome's growing reach. The singular savors of ancient Rome, for a farmer like you, are not just sustenance, but a blend of practicality and ritual, their strangeness rooted in the creative use of local and traded goods. Your day begins with pulse, a thick porridge made from spelt or barley grown in your fields. You cook it in a clay pot over a fire of olive wood, stirring until creamy, sometimes adding a drizzle of olive oil or a handful of crushed figs for sweetness. The oddity lies in the seasoning, a splash of garum, a pungent fermented fish sauce from the coast, adds a salty umami depth that transforms the humble grain. As noted in texts like Cato's De Agri, this sauce, made from anchovies and herbs, is both a staple and a curiosity, its sharp aroma lingering dot at midday. You rest under a cypress tree, eating libum, a dense flatbread baked with spelt and served with a paste of lentils and leeks, flavored with cumin or wild fennel. Meat is rare, perhaps a sliver of pork or goat during festivals, roasted with salt and offered to Jupiter, but you rely on fish, like sardines from the Tyrrhenian Sea, grilled or pickled in brine. The strangeness comes in dishes like moratam, a spread of garlic, herbs, and cheese, pounded in a mortar and spread on bread, its intense flavor a farmer's delight. Vegetables like cabbage or turnips, grown in your plot, are boiled or eaten raw, paired with olives or dried grapes. Your drink is pasca water, mixed with vinegar and herbs, refreshing in the heat, or a rough wine, Laura, made from grape pressings, its tartness a daily comfort. These foods, detailed in Roman agricultural texts, reflect resilience, turning modest harvests into sustenance through fermentation and trade. Yet, as you trade olives at the local market, you hear tales of lavish feasts in Rome's villas, where patricians dine. What singular dishes await in those grand halls, and how do they differ from your rustic fare? Now, picture yourself as a steward in a wealthy Roman villa on the Palatine Hill, around 50 CE, overseeing provisions for a banquet honoring a senator. You've left the countryside behind, and the singular savors of ancient Rome now unfold in the opulence of the city. The food here, prepared in bustling culinary kitchens, blends rustic roots with the wealth of empire, reflecting Rome's dominion over distant lands. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by exotic ingredients and elaborate rituals that make each dish a display of power. The elite dine on bread, but not your coarse pulls. Fine wheat from Egypt is baked into soft panes quadratus, scored into wedges, and served with olive oil infused with rosemary or saffron, a spice from the East. You manage stores of barley and lentils, but the main course features meats absent from your old diet: roasted peacock or dormouse, fattened in clay jars and glazed with honey and garum, their tender flesh a marvel. Fish, like mullet from the Mediterranean, are baked in parchment with dill and pepper from India, paired with a sauce of liquamina, refined garum mixed with wine and lavish. Its savory tang a revelation. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from imperial estates and trade routes. You see platters of asparagus, boiled and dressed with vinegar and coriander, or figs from Syria, their sweetness a luxury. The oddity lies in dishes like patina, a custard of eggs, fish, and herbs, baked until golden, or a strange salad of mallow leaves and mint, tossed with garum and vinegar. Drinks are central malsum, a honeyed wine, is poured from silver amphorae, while pasca is refined with rose petals for the elite. The strangest is conditum, a spiced wine with pepper and saffron, served warm during toasts to Vesta. Desserts include dulcia, dates stuffed with walnuts and rolled in honey, or cakes of spelt and poppy seeds baked with rosewater. These meals, described by Apicius in De Re Coquinaria, are acts of status and devotion, feeding guests and gods. Yet, you notice the cost. The grain, spices, and fish rely on ships from Egypt and Asia, vulnerable to storms or piracy. The resilience of Roman cuisine, its garum, preserved fruits, and versatile grains sustains the city. But excess strains the empire. As you tally another shipment of pepper, you wonder what happens when trade falters or harvests fail, leaving even these lavish tables bare. You are now a guest at a Grand Senna in Rome, around 100 CE, reclining on a cushioned couch in a triclinium adorned with mosaics and frescoes. The singular savors of ancient Rome, tasted in the fields and managed in the villa, now unfold in their full splendor. This is the zenith of Roman culinary art, where food is spectacle, power, and pleasure, reflecting an empire at its peak. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility beneath the opulence. Its strangeness, a mirror of a civilization stretched by conquest and luxury. The feast begins with a libation to Bacchus, tables grown with dishes that dazzle. You taste panis siligineus, fine white bread from Campanian wheat, served with olive oil and crushed oregano, its softness a far cry from your farmer's pulls. The Gestasio starter includes ovea elixa, boiled eggs with garum and pine nuts, and a strange lucanica, a sausage of pork and fennel smoked over laurel wood. The main course is a roasted wild boar, its meat succulent and spiced with pepper, cumin, and silphium, a rare herb from Cyrene, served with a sauce of liquamen and apricots. Fish turbot from the Adriatic car, baked with leeks and garum, their delicate flesh a poetic balance of sea and spice. Vegetables and fruits are lavish. You sample artichokes, steamed with mint and coriander, or peaches from Persia, paired with soft cheese and garum. A peculiar dish stands out, a littered dulce, a pudding of milk, honey, and ground spelt, studded with raisins and flavored with rosewater, its creamy texture a surprise. Desserts are divine, globally dough balls fried in oil and coated in honey and poppy seeds, or dates stuffed with almonds and cinnamon. Drinks flow Falernian wine, aged and poured from gold cups, or conditome paradoxum, spiced with saffron and mastic. The oddest is a mulled wine with silphium and myrrh, sipped during toasts to Jupiter. This opulence, chronicled by Martial and Petronius, masks a deeper truth. Rome's wealth relies on fragile trade routes and conquered lands. Texts like Pliny's warn of grain shortages and over-reliance on Egypt. The resilience of Roman cuisine, its garum preserved fruits, and hearty grain-shaped Mediterranean diets, echoing in modern pestos and pickles. Yet, the feast's excess, like the empire, courts collapse. By the 3rd century, inflation and invasions would dim Rome's glory. As you leave, you reflect on how these singular savors, born of ingenuity and empire, defined Rome. In today's world, where global supply chains mirror Rome's networks, what lessons do these strange flavors teach about balancing abundance with vulnerability? Story 11. The exotic eats of the Mali Empire. Imagine yourself in a village near the Niger River, around 1300 CE, where you are a millet farmer tending fields in the fertile savanna of the Mali Empire. The air is warm, scented with damp soil and flowering baobab trees, and your life is shaped by the rhythms of planting and harvest under the protection of ancestral spirits. The food you eat is simple, drawn from the land's bounty, yet carries an exotic flair that reflects the Mali Empire's wealth and trade. The exotic eats of the Mali Empire, for a farmer like you, are not just sustenance, but a blend of survival and ritual. Their strangeness rooted in the creative use of local and traded ingredients. Your day begins with a bowl of millet porridge, or tea, the cornerstone of your diet. You grind the grain with a wooden pestle, cooking it in a clay pot over a fire of acacia wood until thick and sticky. Sometimes you stir in a handful of crushed groundnuts for richness, or a splash of tamarind juice for a tart kick. The oddity lies in the seasoning. A paste of fermented locust beans, or sumbala, adds a pungent umami depth, a practice noted in oral traditions and early traveler accounts like those of Ibn Battuta. This funky paste transforms the plain millet into something vibrant. At midday, you rest under a shea tree, eating flatbreads made from sorghum, rolled thin and baked on a hot stone. You pair them with a stew of okra and dried fish from the Niger, flavored with dried baobab leaves or dawa dawa, a fermented seed paste with a sharp, cheesy aroma. Meat is rare, perhaps a goat during festivals. Roasted with salt and chili bud, you rely on smoked fish or insects like locusts, toasted and crunchy, for protein. The strangeness comes in sauces. A fiery blend of chili and shea butter, spread on bread, adds a nutty heat. Vegetables like eggplant or cowpeas grown in your plot are boiled or mashed, while fruits like mangoes or wild dates add sweetness. Your drink is a fermented millet beer, cloudy and tart, sipped from a calabash, or water infused with hibiscus flowers, its ruby hue refreshing. These foods, preserved in Mali's oral histories, reflect resilience, turning savanna harvests into abundance through fermentation and trade. Yet, as you trade millet at the local market, you hear tales of lavish feasts in Timbuktu's palaces, where Mansa Musa's court dines. What exotic dishes await there, and how do they differ from your humble fare? Now, envision yourself as a griot in Timbuktu around 1325 CE, reciting tales of Mansa Musa's wealth while recording provisions for a royal feast. You've left the millet fields behind, and the exotic eats of the Mali Empire now unfold in the vibrant heart of this trade hub. The food here, prepared in bustling kitchens, blends village traditions with the opulence of a gold-rich empire, reflecting Mali's role as a crossroads of Saharan trade. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by rare ingredients and rituals that tie each dish to power and the divine. The elite dine on grains, but not your coarse tea. Fine millet or sorghum is pounded into smooth flour for delicate flatbreads, baked in clay ovens, and served with shea butter or honey from the Sahel note stores of rice, a luxury from southern wetlands. Steamed with groundnuts and sumbala for a rich, savory depth. The main course features meats absent from your old diet, roasted lamb or antelope, traded from nomadic herders, glazed with tamarind and chili, their tender flesh a symbol of wealth. Fish, like tilapia from the Niger, are grilled with dawa dawa and wrapped in banana leaves, paired with a sauce of tomatoes and fermented locust beans. Its bold flavor, a nod to trade with distant regions. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from irrigated gardens and caravans. You see platters of kola nuts, prized for their bitter kick, or sweet watermelons from the south. Greens like spinach are stewed with shea butter and chili, balancing meat's richness. The oddity lies in dishes like a stew of baobab fruit and okra, thickened with ground sesame, or a strange salad of hibiscus leaves and groundnuts, dressed with lime and sambala. Drinks are lavish. Dolo is refined, filtered, and flavored with ginger, while hibiscus tea, or bisop, is poured from silver vessels. The strangest is a fermented sorghum drink, spiked with cola nuts. Its bitter fizz, a ritual offering. Desserts include cakes of millet and honey, studded with dried mango, or a paste of roasted groundnuts and baobab shaped into balls. These meals, echoed in Ibn Battuta's accounts, are acts of diplomacy and devotion, feeding nobles and spirits. Yet you see the cost. The rice, spices, and fish rely on Saharan trade routes and peasant labor, vulnerable to drought or raids. The resilience of Mali's cuisine, its fermented pastes, spicy sauces, and hearty grains, sustains the empire. But excess strains the system. As you recite another verse, you wonder what happens when caravans falter or the Niger's floods fail, leaving even Timbuktu's tables bare. You are now a guest at a royal feast in Niani, around 1350 CE, seated among scholars and merchants in a hall adorned with woven mats and gold ornaments. The exotic eats of the Mali Empire, tasted in the fields and recorded in Timbuktu, now unfold in their full splendor. This is the zenith of Malian culinary art, where food is power, faith, and celebration, reflecting an empire at its peak. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility beneath the opulence. Its strangeness, a mirror of a civilization reliant on trade and rivers. The feast begins with an offering to ancestral spirits, tables laden with dishes that dazzle. You taste fine sorghum flatbreads, soft and brushed with shea butter and honey, a far cry from your farmer's tea. The centerpiece is a roasted gazelle, its meat succulent and spiced with chili and dawa, served with a sauce of tamarind and groundnuts, a fiery nutty blend that captivates. Fish catfish from the Nigerer, baked in clay with ginger and baobab leaves, their smoky flesh paired with a salsa of tomatoes and sambala. The strangest is a dish of smoked ostrich, a rare delicacy from the Sahel, seasoned with coriander and served with a fermented millet paste. Its chewy intensity, a surprise noted in oral griot tales. Fruits and vegetables shine. You sample sweet soursop and dates from Saharan oases, paired with bitter greens like moringa, dressed with sesame oil. A peculiar dish stands out, a stew of yam and hibiscus flowers, thickened with ground pumpkin seeds, its tart creaminess a revelation. Desserts are divine, cakes of rice, flour, and honey shaped like crescents, or a strange treat of roasted locusts coated in baobab syrup, their crunch a nod to ritual offerings. Drinks, floby sip, vibrant and tart, or dolo, poured from gold calabashes. The oddest is a fermented millet brew with cola, nuts, and clove, sipped during toasts to the ancestors. This opulence, reflected in traveler accounts and griot songs, masks a deeper truth. Mali's wealth depends on fragile caravans and river-fed fields. Archaeological evidence shows drought and overgrazing stressing crops by the 14th century. The resilience of Malian cuisines, sambala, spicy sauces, and versatile millet-shaped West African diets, echoing in modern jollof rice and peanut stews. Yet, The feast's excess, like the empire, courts collapse. By the 15th century, Songhai's rise would dim Mali's glory. As you leave, you reflect on how these exotic eats, born of ingenuity and trade, defined the Mali Empire. In today's world, where climate and global markets echo their challenges, what lessons do these strange flavors teach about balancing abundance with resilience? Story 12. The Bizarre Bites of the Viking Age. Picture yourself in a coastal village in Scandinavia, around 900 CE, where you are a fisherman casting nets into the icy waters of the North Sea. The air is sharp, scented with salt and pine, and your life is shaped by the tides and the harsh Nordic winters. The food you eat is rugged, drawn from the sea and sparse land, yet carries a bizarre charm that reflects the Vikings' resourcefulness. The bizarre bites of the Viking Age, for a fisherman like you, are not just sustenance, but a blend of survival and ritual. Their strangeness rooted in the ingenious use of the northern environment. Your day begins with a bowl of scouse, a thick porridge of barley or oats grown in small plots near the village. You cook it in an iron cauldron over a fire of driftwood, stirring until hearty, sometimes adding dried berries like lingonberries for a tart burst. The oddity lies in the seasoning. A dollop of sour whey or syra, a fermented dairy product, adds a tangy depth that preserves and flavors, as noted in sagas like the Laxdela saga. This sharp, cheesy liquid is a staple, drizzled over bread or porridge to stretch meager supplies at midday. You rest by the shore, eating flatbread, a crisp barley flatbread baked on a stone, paired with a stew of turnips and dried cod, flavored with wild dill or angelica. Meat is scarce perhaps, a lamb at a seasonal feast, roasted with salt and offered to Thorbot fish, like herring or salmon, is your mainstay, smoked over birch or pickled in whey. The strangeness comes in dishes like hakarl, fermented shark buried in sand for months. Its pungent, ammonia-like taste a test of endurance. Vegetables like cabbage or leeks, grown in summer, are preserved in brine, while fruits like cloudberries are dried for sweetness. Your drink is emgin, a fermented honey mead, sweet and warming, sipped from a horn, or water flavored with spruce tips. These foods, preserved in Norse sagas and archaeological finds, like fish bones, reflect resilience, turning harsh winters into sustenance through fermentation and smoking. Yet, as you trade fish at the village longhouse, you hear tales of feasts in the halls of jarls, where Viking chieftains dine. What bizarre dishes await there, and how do they differ from your simple fare? Now, imagine yourself as a skald in a bustling trading town like Birka, around 950 CE, composing poems for a feast hosted by a wealthy jarl. You've left the fishing nets behind, and the bizarre bites of the Viking Age now reveal themselves in the lively heart of Norse commerce. The food here, prepared in smoky longhouse kitchens, blends rugged tradition with the wealth of trade routes, reflecting the Vikings' far-reaching voyages. The strangeness you tasted as a fisherman persists, but it's elevated by exotic ingredients and rituals that tie each dish to power and the gods. The elite dine on grains, but not just your coarse scouse. Fine barley is ground into flour for soft flatbreads, baked in clay ovens and served with butter or honey from Baltic traders. You note stores of rye, traded from the east, baked into dense loaves and paired with smoked eel, rich with dill and syra. The main course features meats absent from your old diet: roasted boar or elk, hunted in northern forests, glazed with honey and mustard seeds from Frankish markets, their bold flavors a mark of status. Fish, like cod from the Atlantic, are dried and pounded into a paste with syra and herbs, or grilled with juniper berries, a nod to woodland foraging. Vegetables and fruits are plentiful, sourced from summer gardens and raids. You see platters of crabbables, tart and paired with soft skyr, a creamy cheese-like yogurt. Root vegetables, like parsnips, are roasted with thyme, balancing meat's richness. The oddity lies in dishes like surströmming, fermented herring stored in barrels, its stench so potent it's eaten outdoors. Or a strange stew of seal blubber and barley, thickened with blood for a savory depth. Drinks are central. Emgid is refined, flavored with bog myrtle, while ale, brewed from barley, is poured from wooden tankards. The strangest is a fermented mare's milk, traded from steppe nomads, its sour fizz a diplomatic gesture. Desserts include cakes of oats and dried bilberries, drizzled with honey, or a paste of roasted hazelnuts and cloudberries, shaped into small rounds. These meals, echoed in sagas and trade records, are acts of prestige and offerings to Odin. Yet you see the cost: the grains, spices, and fish rely on raids and trade across stormy seas, vulnerable to failed harvests or shipwrecks. The resilience of Viking cuisine, its fermented fish, preserved roots, and hardy grains, sustains the Norse. But excess strains the system. As you recite another verse, you wonder what happens when winters deepen or trade routes falter, leaving even these grand halls hungry. You are now a guest at a grand feast in a chieftain's hall in Norway. Around 1000 CE, seated among warriors and traders on benches draped with furs. The bizarre bites of the Viking age, tasted by the sea and recited in burqa, now unfold in their full splendor. This is the pinnacle of Norse culinary art, where food is power, ritual, and survival, reflecting a culture of exploration and conquest. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility beneath the abundance, its strangeness a mirror of a society reliant on harsh lands and distant shores. The feast begins with an offering to Freyr, tables laden with dishes that dazzle. You taste soft rye bread, baked with butter and sprinkled with caraway seeds, a far cry from your fisherman's flatbread. The centerpiece is a roasted reindeer, its meat tender and spiced with juniper and bog myrtle, served with a sauce of fermented whey and lingonberries, a tart savory blend that captivates. Fish salmon from northern rivers are smoked over alder and paired with a paste of syra and wild garlic. The strangest is hakarl, the fermented shark, now refined with herbs and served in thin slices, its ammonia sting tamed but still bold, a delicacy praised in sagas. Fruits and vegetables shine. You sample preserved sloes and cloudberries, paired with skyr thickened with moss for a creamy temp. A peculiar dish stands out, a stew of nettles and barley, enriched with seal fat and flavored with angelica, its earthy depth a revelation. Desserts are divine, cakes of barley and honey shaped like runes, or a strange treat of roasted pine nuts coated in bilberry syrup, their crunch a nod to ritual offerings. Drinks flow-imged, golden and scented with heather, or ale poured from silver-rimmed horns. The oddest is a fermented barley brew with spruce tips and bog myrtle, sipped during toasts to Thor. This opulence, reflected in sagas like Egil's saga and archaeological finds, masks a deeper truth. Norse wealth depends on fragile harvests and raids across the North Sea. Evidence from pollen records shows climate shifts, stressing crops by the 11th century. The resilience of Viking cuisine, its syra, fermented fish, and hearty grain-shaped Scandinavian diets, echoing in modern smorgasbords and pickled herring. Yet the feast's excess, like Viking expansion, courts collapse. By the 12th century, Christianization and colder climates would shift Norse traditions. As you leave, you reflect on how these bizarre bites, born of ingenuity and exploration, defined the Viking Age, where climate and global trade echo their challenges. What lessons do these strange flavors teach about balancing abundance with resilience? Story 13. The peculiar plates of the Persian Empire. Imagine yourself in a village near Persepolis, around 500 BCE, where you are a farmer tending orchards and wheat fields in the fertile plains of Persis. The air is fragrant with blossoming pomegranates, and your life is shaped by the cycles of irrigation and harvest under the gaze of Ahura Mazda. The food you eat is simple, drawn from the rich soils of the Persian Empire, yet carries a peculiar charm that reflects its cultural crossroads. The peculiar plates of the Persian Empire, for a farmer like you, are not just sustenance, but a blend of tradition and ritual, their strangeness rooted in the creative use of local and traded ingredients. Your day begins with a or naan, made from wheat grown in your fields. You knead the dough with water from a qanat, baking it on a clay tandoor over a fire of tamarisk wood. The bread is soft, slightly charred, and eaten with a spread of crushed lentils and wild mint, or a drizzle of date syrup for sweetness. The oddity lies in the seasoning. A sprinkle of sumac, tart and lemony, adds a zesty kick, a practice noted in Achaemenid records. This tangy spice, foraged from nearby hills, elevates the humble meal. At midday, you rest under a fig tree, eating a stew of barley and chickpeas, flavored with dill and a pinch of saffron, a precious spice traded from the east. Meat is rare, perhaps a goat during festivals, roasted with salt and offered to Mithridat. You rely on fish from the Persian Gulf, like mullet, grilled or dried, paired with a sauce of tamarind and cumin. The strangeness comes in dishes like korish, a thick stew of eggplants and sour grapes, its tart-sweet balance a surprise. Vegetables like onions or spinach, grown in irrigated plots, are staples, while fruits like pomegranates or quinces add tartness. Your drink is doog, a fermented yogurt mixed with water and mint, cooling in the heat, or a thin barley beer sipped from clay cups. These foods, hinted at in cuneiform tablets and archaeological finds, reflect resilience, turning arid lands into abundance through irrigation and trade. Yet, as you trade dates at the village market, you hear tales of feasts in Persepolis palaces where Darius dines. What peculiar dishes await there, and how do they differ from your rustic fare? Now, picture yourself as a scribe in Susa, around 480 BCE, inscribing clay tablets to track provisions for a royal banquet, honoring Xerxes. You've left the orchards behind, and the peculiar plates of the Persian Empire now unfold in the opulent heart of this administrative capital. The food here, prepared in vast palace kitchens, blends rural traditions with the wealth of empire, reflecting Persia's dominion over lands from India to Egypt. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by exotic ingredients and rituals that tie each dish to imperial glory. The elite dine on bread, but not your simple naan. Fine wheat from Mesopotamia is baked into soft, pillowy loaves, served with clarified butter or honey from Hyrcania. You record stores of rice, a luxury from India, steamed with almonds and saffron, its golden hue a mark of refinement. The main course features meats absent from your old diet, roasted gazelle or ostrich, sourced from royal hunts, glazed with pomegranate molasses and sumac, their rich flavors a spectacle. Fish, like carp from the Tigris, are baked in clay with dill and fenugreek, paired with a sauce of fermented barley and tamarind. Its tangy depth a nod to Babylonian influence. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from satrapies and royal gardens. You see platters of pistachios, walnuts, and mulberries, their sweetness a luxury. Greens like watercress are dressed with vinegar and za'atar, a blend of thyme and sesame. The oddity lies in dishes like a stew of quinces and lamb, simmered with cinnamon from India, or a strange salad of rose petals and cucumber, tossed with sumac and yogurt. Drinks are lavish, wine from Shiraz, poured from silver rhytons, or dug refined with rosewater. The strangest is a fermented date wine, spiced with cardamom, sipped during toasts to Ahura Mazda. Desserts include pastries of wheat and honey, stuffed with dates and saffron, or a paste of roasted sesame and figs, shaped into crescents. These meals, noted in Herodotus accounts and reliefs, are acts of diplomacy and devotion, feeding nobles and gods. Yet, you see the cost. The rice, spices, and fish rely on vast trade networks and corvée labor, vulnerable to rebellion or drought. The resilience of Persian cuisine, its tart sauces, preserved fruits, and versatile grains stains the empire, but excess strains the system. As you inscribe another tablet, you wonder what happens when caravans falter or rivers dry, leaving even Susa's tables bare. You are now a guest at a royal feast in Persepolis around 460 BCE, seated among satraps and priests in a hall adorned with reliefs of lions and lotus flowers. The peculiar plates of the Persian Empire, tasted in the fields and recorded in Susa, now unfold in their full splendor. This is the zenith of Achaemenid culinary art, where food is power, ritual, and art, reflecting an empire at its peak. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility beneath the opulence. Its strangeness, a mirror of a civilization stretched by conquest and diversity. The feast begins with an offering to Ahura Mazda, tables grown with dishes that dazzle. You taste nani parpari, a soft wheat bread studded with sesame, served with clarified butter and crushed mint, a far cry from your farmer's naan. The centerpiece is a roasted peacock, its meat succulent and spiced with saffron and sumac, served with a sauce of pomegranate molasses and walnuts. a tart nutty blend that captivates. Fish sturgeon from the Caspian are baked with coriander and tamarind, their rich flesh paired with a yogurt and dill sauce. The strangest is a dish of braised camel hump, a delicacy from Bactria, simmered with rosewater and cumin, its fatty texture a surprise noted in royal inscriptions. Fruits and vegetables shine. You sample apricots and citrons from Central Asia, paired with bitter greens like chicory, dressed with za'atar and olive oil. A peculiar dish stands out, a stew of lentils and sour cherries, thickened with ground almonds, its sweet tart complexity a revelation. Desserts are divine, pastries of rice, flour, and honey, shaped like stars, or a strange treat of roasted pistachios coated in saffron syrup, their crunch a nod to ritual offerings. Drinks, Flocheras wine, aged and poured from gold rhytons, or charbat, a rosewater and quince drink. The oddest is a fermented barley beer with cardamom and myrrh, sipped during toasts to mithra. This opulence, reflected in Xenophon's accounts and Persepolis reliefs, masks a deeper truth. Persia's wealth depends on fragile satrapies and trade routes from Egypt to India. Archaeological evidence shows drought and overtaxation stressing crops by the 5th century BCE. The resilience of Persian cuisine, its tart molasses, spiced stews, and hearty grains-shaped Middle Eastern diets, echoing in modern kebabs and pilafs. Yet the feast's excess, like the empire, court's collapse. By the 4th century, Alexander's conquests would dim Persepolis' glory. As you leave, you reflect on how these peculiar plates, born of ingenuity and empire, defined Persia. In today's world, where global supply chains mirror Persia's networks, what lessons do these strange flavors teach about balancing abundance with resilience? Story 14. The Quirky Quandaries of the Khmer Empire. Imagine yourself in a village near Angkor around 1100 CE, where you are a rice farmer tending paddies in the lush floodplains of the Tonle Sap. The air is humid, scented with lotus blossoms and muddy earth, and your life is shaped by the monsoon's pulse and the blessings of Vishnu. The food you eat is simple, drawn from the fertile wetlands, yet carries a quirky charm that reflects the Khmer Empire's ingenuity. The quirky quandaries of the Khmer Empire, for a farmer like you, are not just sustenance, but a blend of survival and ritual, their strangeness rooted in the creative use of the region's bounty. Your day begins with a bowl of rice porridge, or kai tiv, made from rice grown in your fields. You cook it in a clay pot over a fire of palm wood, stirring until creamy, sometimes adding a handful of dried fish or a splash of tamarind juice for temps. The oddity lies in the seasoning. A paste of fermented fish, prahok, adds a pungent umami depth, a staple noted in Zhou Deguan's accounts. This funky paste, made from fish left to ferment in jars, transforms the plain rice into something vibrant and sacred. At midday, you rest under a banyan tree, eating sticky rice wrapped in banana leaves, paired with a curry of water, spinach, and small fish from the lake, flavored with lemongrass and krowong, a spice paste of galangal and turmeric. Meat is rare, perhaps a chicken during festivals, grilled with chili and offered to the gods, but fish, like snakehead, is your mainstay, smoked or stir-fried with holy basil. The strangeness comes in dishes like amak, a custard of fish and coconut milk, steamed in banana leaves. Its creamy, spicy balance, a surprise. Vegetables like morning glory or taro, grown in flooded fields, are staples, while fruits like mangosteen or rambutan add sweetness. Your drink is palm juice, fresh or slightly fermented, sipped from a gourd, or water infused with pandan leaves. These foods, etched in Angkor's bas-reliefs, reflect resilience, turning monsoon floods into abundance through irrigation and fermentation. Yet, as you trade rice at the village market, you hear tales of feasts in Angkor's palaces, where kings dine. What quirky dishes await there, and how do they differ from your humble fare? Now, envision yourself as a temple scribe in Angkor Wat, around 1150 CE, carving inscriptions to record offerings for a festival honoring Jayavarman VII. You've left the patties behind, and the quirky quandaries of the Khmer Empire now unfold in the sacred heart of this temple city. The food here, prepared in bustling palace kitchens, blends village traditions with the grandeur of empire, reflecting the Khmer's spiritual and trade prowess. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by rare ingredients and rituals that tie each dish to the divine. The elite dine on rice, but not your simple kai tiv. Jasmine rice, harvested from royal fields, is steamed to perfection or shaped into delicate dumplings filled with minced pork and prahak, flavored with lemongrass and kaffir lime. You record stores of glutinous rice, pounded into cakes and paired with coconut cream. The main course features meats absent from your old diet, roasted wild boar or water buffalo, glazed with tamarind and chili, their rich flavors a mark of wealth. Fish, like giant Mekong catfish, are steamed in bamboo with kroung and coconut milk, paired with a sauce of fermented shrimp, paste, and lime. Its bold tempts a nod to trade with coastal regions. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from temple gardens and trade routes. You see platters of jackfruit, durians, and pomelos, their sweetness a luxury. Greens like amaranth are stir-fried with garlic and prahak, balancing meat's richness. The oddity lies in dishes like a curry of lotus root and duck, simmered with galangal and turmeric, or a strange salad of banana blossoms and smoked fish, dressed with tamarind and chili. Drinks are lavish, palm wine, fermented and poured from ceramic jars, or coconut water infused with jasmine. The strangest is a fermented rice drink, esrasor, spiked with cardamom, sipped during offerings to Brahma. Desserts include sticky rice cakes filled with mung bean paste, steamed in palm leaves, or a paste of roasted coconut and palm sugar, shaped into lotus flowers. These meals, depicted in Angkor's carvings, are acts of devotion and power, feeding kings and deities. Yet you see the cost. The rice, spices, and fish rely on vast irrigation systems and trade, vulnerable to floods or war. The resilience of Khmer cuisine's prahak, spicy curries, and versatile rices stains the empire, but excess strains the system. As you carve another inscription, you wonder, what happens when monsoons fail or canals clog, leaving even Angkor's tables bare? You are now a guest at a royal feast in Angkor Thom, around 1200 CE, seated among nobles in a hall adorned with stone apsaras and gilded statues. The quirky quandaries of the Khmer Empire, tasted in the patties and recorded in Angkor Wat, now unfold in their full splendor. This is the zenith of Khmer culinary art, where food is devotion, spectacle, and ingenuity, reflecting an empire at its peak. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility beneath the opulence. Its strangeness, a mirror of a civilization reliant on monsoons and intricate waterworks. The feast begins with an offering to Vishnu, tables laden with dishes that dazzle. You taste jasmine rice cakes, soft and wrapped in banana leaves, flavored with coconut and crowong, a far cry from your farmer's porridge. The centerpiece is a roasted peacock, its meat tender and spiced with galangal and chili, served with a sauce of prahok and tamarind, a creamy fiery blend that captivates. Fish giant barb from the Tonal Sapar steamed in lotus leaves with lemongrass and coconut milk, paired with a salsa of green mango and shrimp paste. The strangest is a dish of stir-fried water snake, marinated in crowong and palm sugar, its chewy texture, a delicacy noted in temple records. Fruits and vegetables shine. You sample custard apples and longans, paired with bitter greens like neem, dressed with fish sauce and lime. A peculiar dish stands out, a curry of taro and frog, thickened with coconut cream and turmeric. Its earthy, spicy depth, a revelation. Desserts are divine. Sticky rice dumplings filled with jackfruit and palm sugar, or a strange treat of roasted crickets coated in coconut syrup. Their crunch, a nod to ritual offerings. Drinks flow palm wine, golden and poured from silver jars, or esrasor with star anise. The oddest is a fermented rice brew with lotus seeds, sipped during toasts to the gods. This opulence, carved in Angkor's reliefs and Zhou Daguan's accounts, masks a deeper truth. The Khmer's wealth depends on fragile canals and trade routes to China and India. Archaeological evidence shows silted waterways and drought-stressing crops by the 13th century. The resilience of Khmer cuisines, prahok, spicy crowong, and hearty rice-shaped Southeast Asian diets, echoing in modern Cambodian amok and curries. Yet the feast's excess, like the empire, courts collapse. By the 15th century, environmental strain would dim Angkor's glory. As you leave, you reflect on how these quirky, born of faith and ingenuity, defined the Khmer. In today's world, where climate and water management echo their challenges, what lessons do these strange flavors teach about balancing abundance with resilience? Story 15. The Odd Offerings of the Aztec Empire. Picture yourself in a village near Tenochtitlan, around 1450 CE, where you are a maize farmer tending the floating gardens of Lake Texcoco. The air is warm, scented with damp earth and blooming cacao, and your life is shaped by the cycles of planting and harvest under the favor of Tlaloc, the rain god. The food you eat is simple, drawn from the lake's bounty and fertile plots, yet carries an odd charm that reflects the Aztec Empire's ingenuity. The odd offerings of the Aztec Empire, for a farmer like you, are not just sustenance, but a blend of survival and ritual. Their strangeness rooted in the sacred use of local ingredients. Your day begins with a bowl of a thick maize porridge made from corn grown on your chinampa. You grind the kernels on a matate, cooking them in a clay pot over a fire of reeds, stirring until creamy. sometimes adding crushed amaranth seeds or a drizzle of honey for sweetness. The oddity lies in the seasoning. A pinch of ground chili or chili, fiery and bold, adds a sacred heat. As noted in Bernardino de Sahagun's Florentine Codex, this spicy kick, believed to honor the gods, transforms the humble maize. At midday, you rest under a ceiba tree, eating tamales maize dough wrapped in corn husks, stuffed with beans or squash and steamed over embers. Meat is rare, perhaps a turkey during festivals, roasted with salt and offered to Huitzilopochtli, but you rely on fish like axolotl from the lake, grilled or dried, paired with a sauce of tomatoes and chili. The strangeness comes in dishes like tlaquetzli, a stew of insects like grasshoppers, toasted and mixed with agave sap, their nutty crunch a surprise. Vegetables like nopals, cactus pads, or wuzentau, grown on chinampas, are staples, while fruits like guava or prickly pear add tartness. Your drink is pulque, a fermented agave sap, milky and tart, sipped from a clay cup, or water infused with chia seeds. These foods, depicted in Aztec codices, reflect resilience, turning swampy lakes into abundance through chinampas and preservation. Yet, as you trade maize at the village market, you hear tales of feasts in Tenochtitlan's palaces, where Moctezuma dined. What odd dishes await there, and how do they differ from your rustic fare? Now, envision yourself as a priest in Tlatelolco, around 1480 CE, overseeing offerings for a festival honoring Quetzalcoatl in the bustling market city. You've left the chinampas behind, and the odd offerings of the Aztec Empire now unfold in the sacred heart of this urban center. The food here, prepared in temple kitchens, blends village traditions with the grandeur of empire, reflecting the Aztecs' spiritual and trade prowess. The strangeness you tasted as a farmer persists, but it's elevated by rare ingredients and rituals that tie each dish to the divine. The elite dine on maize, but not your simple atole. Fine corn is ground into delicate tamales, stuffed with turkey or venison, and flavored with chili and epazote, a pungent herb. You record stores of amaranth, shaped into sacred cakes called tozo ali, mixed with honey and offered to the gods before being eaten. The main course features meats absent from your old diet, roasted dog or deer, sourced from royal hunts, glazed with agave syrup and chili. Their bold flavors, a mark of status. Fish like tilapia from Lake Texcoco are baked in maguey leaves with mold, a sauce of cacao, tomatoes, and chilies. Its complex depth, a nod to trade with the South. Vegetables and fruits are abundant, sourced from chinampas and tribute. You see platters of mame, cherimoya, and sapodilla, their sweetness a luxury. Greens like qualites are boiled and dressed with chili and pumpkin seeds, balancing meat's richness. The oddity lies in dishes like a stew of nopals and frog simmered with ancho chilies, or a strange salad of watercress and roasted maguey worms, dressed with lime and chili. Drinks are central. Pulque is refined, flavored with prickly pear, while chocolatol, a frothy cacao drink spiced with vanilla and chili, is poured from ceramic vessels. The strangest is a fermented maize drink pozole, spiked with cacao, sipped during rituals. Desserts include maize cakes filled with guava paste, or a paste of roasted pumpkin seeds and honey shaped into sun discs. These meals, noted in Sahagan's records, are acts of devotion and power, feeding priests and deities. Yet you see the cost. The maize, cacao, and fish rely on chinampas and tribute from distant lands, vulnerable to drought or rebellion. The resilience of Aztec cuisine, its mole, spicy chili, and versatile macist stains the empire, but excess strains the system. As you inscribe another offering, you wonder what happens when rains fail or tribute falters, leaving even Tlatelolco's tables bare. You are now a guest at a royal feast in Tenochtitlan around 1500 CE, seated among nobles in a palace adorned with feathered tapestries and obsidian carvings. The odd offerings of the Aztec Empire, tasted in the chinampas and recorded in Tlatelolco, now unfold in their full splendor. This is the zenith of Aztec culinary art, where food is sacrifice, spectacle, and ingenuity, reflecting an empire at its peak. Yet, as you savor each dish, you sense the fragility beneath the opulence. Its strangeness, a mirror of a civilization reliant on lakes and conquest. The feast begins with an offering to Huitzilopochtli, tables laden with dishes that dazzle. You taste tortillas, thin maize flatbreads, served with a sauce of chili and roasted tomatoes, a far cry from your farmer's atole. The centerpiece is a roasted turkey, its meat succulent and spiced with pasilla chilies and epazote, served with a mole poblano of cacao, peanuts, and ancho chilies, a rich, smoky blend that captivates. Fish shootenly from Texcocoar, steamed in corn husks with chili and cilantro, paired with a salsa of tomatillos and jalapagos. The strangest is a dish of stewed armadillo, marinated in mole and agave, its earthy texture, a delicacy noted in codices. Fruits and vegetables shine. You sample papayas and custard apples, paired with bitter greens like chaya, dressed with pumpkin seed oil. A peculiar dish stands out, a tamale of amaranth and iguana, steamed with chili and tamarind, its spicy tart depth a revelation. Desserts are divine, maize dumplings filled with cacao and honey, or a strange treat of roasted grasshoppers coated in chili honey syrup, their crunch a nod to ritual offerings. Drinks flow choclitl, frothy and spiced with vanilla, or pulque poured from jade vessels. The oddest is a fermented maize brew with chia and cacao nibs, sipped during toasts to TLALOC. This opulence, chronicled in the Florentine Codex and quartz letters, masks a deeper truth. Aztec wealth depends on fragile chinampas and tribute from conquered lands. Archaeological evidence shows drought and over-farming stressing crops by the 16th century. The resilience of Aztec cuisine, its mole, fiery chili, and hearty maize-shaped Mesoamerican diets, echoing in modern tacos and moles. Yet the feast's excess, like the empire, courts collapse. By 1521, Spanish conquest would shatter Tenochtitlan's glory. As you leave, you reflect on how these odd offerings, born of faith and ingenuity, defined the Aztecs. In today's world, where climate and agriculture echo their challenges, what lessons do these strange flavors teach about balancing abundance with resilience?